I woke up in the Great Y as a farmhand's son, in a world where great families are ranked in 9 grades and my father worked another man's fields until it killed him. My name is Seo Chan. Then the bloodline genealogy opened in me, and it did not hand talents to me, it handed them to my children. I spent them one by one, and my eldest stood at the innate realm before 20. A farmhand's line does not make sons like that. Mine does. If this hook caught you, hit like and subscribe to lock in your spot for the next part. Both buttons matter. But every fortune begins in a small room. Let me show you mine. The sun is going down over Dongseo village, and my shadow runs a long way ahead of me on the path. I have a hoe across one shoulder and a straw hat pushed back off my forehead. My trouser legs are rolled to the knee, and 2 fat grass carps swing from a loop of straw in my hand. A whole summer of this has turned my skin the color of old bronze, and it catches the last of the light. Under the big locust tree at the edge of the village, Uncle Jin works a cattail fan with the patience of a man who has nowhere to be. He sees the fish before he sees me, and his whole face creases up. He tells me I have done well today, and I tell him he is out here enjoying the cool air again. He blames the heavens for the heat and says only a constitution like mine could stand under that poisonous sun as long as I do. I grin and let it pass, because the truth is not something I can hand across a fence. I stand a shade over 6 feet, and I am put together evenly. Next to the other men of Dongseo village, nobody would call me powerful, and a fair number of them privately think I look thin. What none of them can explain is that I have never once been sick, not as a child and not as a man. The village decided years ago that heaven simply favors me, and I have never bothered to correct them. The real explanation is that I came here from somewhere else, and I did not arrive empty-handed. I was born into an ordinary commoner household, and my father, Seo Pyong, spent his whole life as a long-term farmhand for the Seo estate at the other end of the village. My mother died when I was 3, before I was old enough to understand what had gone out of the house. My father worked himself to death when I was 15. With a grown man's mind sitting behind a boy's face, I learned everything faster than I should have. What I learned best was farming, so when my father died, the estate doubled my wages to keep me. I resigned anyway, and spent almost every coin I had on 1.5 acres of paddy field. The village said I was short-sighted, and by their arithmetic they were right. The Seo estate is famous for 10 miles in every direction. A farmhand's post there is not easy to come by. I only had mine because my father wore out his back earning it first. I gave it up and let another man walk into it. But I have never been able to make the numbers work on growing another man's rice for the rest of my life. After 15 years of keeping my head down, it was time to put up a household of my own. What made that possible is that I came into this life carrying a bloodline genealogy. It arrived with me at birth as a single page with one name on it, and the name was mine. To be entered in it, a person has to put a drop of blood on the page, and their line writes itself. I only worked that out at 6 years old, entirely by accident. What the page told me then was not encouraging. It listed me as the first generation of the Seo family, with a spiritual root of incomplete 5 elements and no aptitude whatsoever for immortal cultivation. Talent, none, and bloodline, none. A young man with nothing to his name. Then the genealogy began producing talents on its own. 3 of them, and I spent all 3 on myself. Dragon essence and tiger vigor keeps my blood and my breath flourishing. I wake with energy, I never fall ill, and I do not take injuries the way other men do. Daily divination lets me read my fortune once a day, though most mornings it comes back neutral. That has as much to do with my habits as with the talent, since a man who never goes looking for trouble does not often find any. Heaven rewards diligence is the quiet one and the best one, because persistence is never wasted on me. Stay at anything and I gain from it. The blessing on any single day is ordinary. What matters is that I have been stacking ordinary days on each other through every winter and summer for years, and the pile is now considerably higher than an ordinary man's. That is why I am the best farmer in this village, and half the commoners here have come to me for advice. Land is a farmer's life, so the goodwill that comes with being useful about it has been worth more than the advice ever cost me. I also do carpentry and grow fruit trees and medicinal herbs, and I can handle a bow well enough not to embarrass myself. I married at 20 on the strength of my own work. Her name is Baek Jong, the eldest daughter of another ordinary commoner family, 3 years younger than me. She has a delicate, pretty face and a diligence nobody ever had to ask for, and everyone agreed we were well matched. Not long after the wedding, I bought another 1.5 acres, this time mountain forest, and planted it with green jade pear. The whole village told me the variety was too delicate for mortals to grow, and that I was wasting my effort. I smiled and planted them anyway. 6 years, 2 sons, a third on the way, due in about 2 months. I tell Uncle Jin I cannot stand here talking because I want to get home and see my wife. He waves me off and tells me to call him for the wine when the child reaches its first month. I tell him to remember to bring a gift, and he laughs and says I will not take the smallest loss even from him. The house is grayish-white walls under dark cyan tiles around a square courtyard, with a tall pear tree in the northeast corner bending its branches under the weight of the fruit. As I come up to the entrance, I find two small backsides pointed at the sky, both boys flat against the base of the wall, staring at something with total concentration. They hear my footsteps, and their heads come around. The moment they see me, their faces break open, and they come at me shouting that I am back. Then the younger one identifies the fish and announces that he wants to eat the big grass carp. I tell him he can, on one condition, which is that the first bowl of fish soup goes to their mother. The older one nods at once, very serious, and explains that mother is carrying a little brother, and it is hard on her, so of course mother eats first. I tell him he is a good boy, and the younger one looks up with his whole face waiting until I tell him he is a good boy too. My eldest is Seo Myungwi, 5 this year, called Dolly at home, and the younger is Seo Myungwon, 3, called Wani. Then I ask what the two of them were doing on the ground. Dolly points at the base of the wall and reports that a great many small ants are there, all lined up neatly and crawling. Ants moving house, I tell him, which means rain tonight. He immediately wants to know what ants moving house means, and how I can possibly tell, and he has the corner of my clothes in his fist with no sign of running out of questions. So I ask whether he still wants fish soup this evening, and mention that blocking his father in the doorway is not the fastest route to it. Both of them look as though the sky has come down, clear my path, and then start pushing me toward the kitchen from behind. Baek-jung comes out with one hand on the door frame and the other under the weight of her belly, still carrying the crease of the pillow on one cheek. She apologizes for sleeping through the afternoon and says she will start dinner right away. I tell her to sit down, because tonight I am cooking. In the kitchen I wash the rice, light the fire, and get it going first, then take the knife to the carp. I scrape the scales, open them up and clean them out, and when they are ready I cut 7 or 8 slashes into each side so the meat takes the flavor properly. Dolly and Wani stand at the edge of the room watching all of it in silence, and the state of their chins tells me exactly how the smell is landing. I send Dolly out to check the chicken coop and he comes back at a run with 2 eggs held in both hands like an offering. I set them aside for scallions and eggs later, then send both boys to herd the chickens in for the night. A minute later, Wani is crying. By the time I get out there, Baek-jung already has him against her shoulder, patting his back, and Dolly delivers the report. The rooster caught Wani with a wing and put him on the ground, and that is where the crying comes from. I crouch down and tell Wani that a real man does not cry, and that his father will avenge him in a few days. He sniffs twice and remarkably stops. Then he wants to know whether I am a man of my word. I ask him when his father has ever said a thing and not done it, and we hook fingers on it, and he says nothing more about the rooster. An hour later, the 5 of us are around the square dining table, and the house is loud in the way I like. Both boys remember what I told them, and the first bowl of soup goes to their mother, which visibly gets to her. Night comes, and so does the rain, hard enough to drum on the tiles. In the dark, she tells me the 3rd child will be here before long, and I should add another tier to the bunk. There is no rush, I tell her, since the 3rd one can sleep in a crib to start with. Then I lay out what I have been thinking, which is expanding the house in a few years by at least 3 rooms. The courtyard is small already, and once the family is larger, the children will have nowhere to move. She says she will follow my lead, then thinks a moment and asks whether we should rent a few more fields, since there will be another mouth and the boys eat more every month. I tell her she has thought it through well, but renting is out of the question. The green jade pears in the mountain forest started bearing last year after all that work, and this year's yield will only be bigger. She lets it go there, and it is not obedience so much as arithmetic, because the Seo family has visibly improved every year since she married in, and she knows exactly who did that. She also knows I treasure her, and she has said more than once that she did not marry the wrong man. Half a month goes by and turns the whole valley gold. The rice stands in sheets of it, swaying when the wind comes across, and every household in Dongseo village is out working the harvest from first light. This morning I run my daily divination before anything else, and for once the hexagram has something in it. Upper middle. Today, while harvesting rice and meeting Uncle Jin's family, I can expect to hear about an inner force manual and about ownerless paddy fields, both from Uncle Jin's own mouth. I have been divining around this for days and I finally have it. An inner force manual. It really is time to start thinking about martial arts in this house. What I have not settled is which of my children walks that road, and that is not a small question, because it decides where the 2nd generation's aptitude goes. Out in the field, Jin Yogu is looking at my paddy with envy he is not bothering to hide. He tells me my family's rice is the best in the village again, that every grain is plump and full, that my 1.5 acres yields what 2.5 of his does. Then he asks whether there is a secret recipe and demands that I teach it to him. Uncle Jin arrives in the middle of that and asks his son what nonsense he is talking, and points out that if there were a secret recipe, why on earth would I hand it over? I tell them both there is no recipe and it is all down to what heaven provides. Given heaven rewards diligence, that is closer to true than either of them will ever know. Jin Iogu is the second son of Uncle Jin's house, a year younger than me, dark from the sun, and he has looked up to me since we were small. Our paddy fields lie side by side. Uncle Jin chuckles and says everyone in Dongseo village knows I am an expert at farming, which is exactly why the Seo estate fought so hard to keep me. He adds that I was wise to resign as a long-term laborer and strike out, and that my life gets better every year. I tell him it still cannot compare to his, and that is not entirely flattery. Uncle Jin's household runs 2 sons and 2 daughters on 20 acres of paddy, 3 acres of farmland, and 5 acres of mountain forest, which is wealthy by the measure of this village. His eldest son has done better still, with genuine martial aptitude, a third-rate martial artist now, settled in Chunggang County town and married to the youngest daughter of a wealthy merchant. So I ask, without appearing to want anything, whether Dame Young is coming back during the busy season. Something complicated crosses Uncle Jin's face at that, pride and helplessness sharing the same expression. He says his Dame Young is a martial artist with his own affairs to attend to. A family does not air its troubles in the open, so he is not going to say a word against his own son in front of a neighbor. I let it alone. Instead, I tell him I envy Dame Young, and that when I have the money I intend to buy an inner force manual and put my son on that road. Then I ask him to raise it with Dame Young the next time they meet. He agrees without hesitating, pats his chest, and says the world is not steady these days and a bit of martial arts for self-defense is no bad thing. Then he sighs and says that if old Yu had thought the same way, he would not have been robbed in the middle of the night and lost his whole family with him. He calls it a pity, and it is. Then his tone shifts, and he warns me seriously that the road of a martial artist is enormously expensive, and that without aptitude, money alone buys nothing in the end. I tell him I understand. Then I say it is a shame about old Yu's family, and ask, as though it has only just occurred to me, what became of their fields. Uncle Jin's eyes light up, because he enjoys knowing things before other people do. He tells me that when people die, everything empties out and the government takes the land back, probably within the next couple of days. If I happen to run into the county bailiffs, he says, I had better move immediately. He adds that my household keeps growing and the children keep getting bigger, and that even at several percent above everyone else's yield, 1.5 acres is simply too little land. Having been read that easily, I do not bother pretending. I tell him nothing gets past him, and that I have exactly that intention, and that with life improving and the family expanding, I have started thinking about more farmland. Commoner or wealthy household, everyone out here treats land the same way, which is that you do not sell it unless something has gone badly wrong. It is the floor under a family. Even if the house declines over a few generations, as long as the land is still in the name, the descendants have something to stand on. Which is why buying paddy is mostly a matter of waiting for a death or a disaster and being first there with money in hand. My luck has been good enough to let me wait. The inner force manual is the lesser priority today. If the price runs too high, I will drop it and come back to it in a year or two, because I know exactly what this family needs first. My nerve on this sort of thing is steady as an old dog. The Grey White dynasty runs the martial Dao and the immortal Dao side by side, and keeps 2 separate ladders of office for them. Martial officials and immortal officials. Immortal cultivation demands aptitude that maybe 1 person in 10,000 has. Anyone who gets up that ladder ends far beyond what any martial artist can match. So immortal officials outrank martial ones in practice as well as on paper. Either way, you need strength, and more than strength, you need connections. A post like that is the same thing the civil service was in the life I came from, which is a rice bowl made of iron. Every martial artist and every low-level immortal cultivator in this dynasty wants one, and handled well, a single such post can carry a family up 2 levels inside a couple of decades. We talk a little longer and then both households get back to cutting. My family only has the 1.5 acres in rice, and we have been at it over 10 days, so there is not much left. I move quickly and finish by midday. After lunch, I go to the threshing ground to spread the harvested rice to dry, which pulls the moisture down and keeps it from molding in storage. Both boys want to know where I am going. When I tell them, Dolly looks up with his small fists clenched and his whole face set, and says he will come and help. I tell him that Dolly will help his father, and rub his head, because a child that's sensible is a gift and I know it. Then Wani announces in his milky little voice that he is coming too. I tell them both to go on then. The threshing ground is busy, and everyone who sees me arrive with the pair of them says something kind about how well-behaved and capable they are. I return the favor about their children, and we all stand there doing the thing parents do. They are still children, though. They work for a very short time, and then something out in the world becomes more interesting than rice, and they are gone without anyone noticing them leave. Dolly is sensible enough that I do not particularly worry. When the 2 of them come back caked in mud from the knees down, I scold them anyway, on principle. Then I strip them to the skin, drop them in the wooden barrel, and hand the problem to Baekjong. The pair of them proceed to splash so much water out of that barrel that she ends up wearing most of it. Late that night, the sky is full of stars and the breeze finally has some cool in it. The next morning, the hexagram comes up auspicious. Mid-morning, the chief secretary of Chonggang County arrives at the entrance of Dongxiu village, and there is a high probability that I will buy 8 acres of paddy field. 8 acres. I run the numbers before I move. 5 acres of farmland feeds more than a dozen people, so what is left after the purchase can go toward an inner force manual. Manuals are not all alike either, and the gap between a top-tier Martial Classic and the cheap end is enormous. I suspect the prices ordinary commoners get quoted are set high deliberately, the same way books were kept out of reach of poor scholars in the world I came from. The great families control martial arts, so that people have no choice but to go to their martial halls and pay for the privilege. Getting anywhere on that road takes more than 10 years. Across all of it, the medicinal cuisine and the chi and blood supplements cannot lapse, which is a dull knife taking a slice off you every month. I have no interest in being held by the throat like that. My family can afford to buy the thing outright now, so I intend to buy something genuinely good and lay the foundation properly. As for an innate manual, that is a conversation for the day somebody in this house is actually born innate. The chief secretary coming down to handle this in person is unusual, which means somebody upstream is making a point. So I go and wait at the village entrance. Dongxiu village is busy with the 100 small jobs that follow a rice harvest, and the wealthy households have taken one look at the heat and decided to stay indoors. The road is quiet when 2 bailiffs in black and a scholar in green robes come up it. I go out to meet them, establish who they are, and tell them plainly that I want to buy old used paddy fields. The chief secretary asks whether I mean all 8 acres, and he is openly surprised. His name is Yang Zhou. He looks me over, takes in the coarse linen and the vest, and files me as exactly what I appear to be. Then he warns me not to make a fool of this official, because the consequences are not something I could carry. His mood is clearly poor and it is in his voice. I tell him I would not dare. He thinks for a moment, names a fair price, and I pay the full amount on the spot. If this were the chief secretary they had before him, the same land would have come in at over 120 ounces of silver an acre, and I would have walked away. My money does not fall out of the sky. Every coin of it has to go in at the cutting edge. The heat in the 8th month is genuinely punishing. Yang Zhou wipes his forehead and looks at me without much interest, and his mood improves anyway, because he has cleared half of what the assistant magistrate handed him before properly entering the village. He knows perfectly well the assistant magistrate is squeezing him because he is new. Rank crushes downward though, and if he fails to finish today, he will be squeezed again when he gets back. He asks my name, I give it, and he tells the bailiffs to check. The tall one opens the official farmland register, and the round-faced one opens the population register. The round-faced one reports that I am a man of Dongxiu village, 26 this year, with 1 wife and 2 sons. The tall one reports that I hold 1.5 acres of paddy and 1.5 acres of mountain forest. Yang Zhou grunts, satisfied, and notes that as a man of this village I hold the right of first refusal. He takes the silver notes, writes up the registration, and has me sign and press my fingerprint. Then he hands me the certificate and tells me that from this moment the 8 acres of you whose family's paddy belong to me. I put it away against my body carefully. I am halfway to leaving when he calls after me. He says that meeting at the village entrance is a kind of fate, and that since I am a man of Dongxiu village I must know where you whose fields are. He wants a guide. Government officials are not people to be short with, so I nod and offer to take him around the fields myself. With me walking them out, Yang Zhou finishes the assistant magistrate's entire errand in half a day. Yuhu's remaining 5 acres of prime paddy and 5 acres of mountain forest all find owners before dusk. Then he tells me the trip is done and I do not need to keep them company, so I agree pleasantly and go home. I tell Big Zhong about the day and she stops what she is doing. 8 acres, she says. Was I not planning on 3 or 5 at the most? I tell her it was fate and also destiny in my most mysterious voice, and then produce the certificate. She takes it, reads it, and her face changes completely. She says that for a very long time we will not have to worry about grain, and the surplus can go for silver besides. I tell her to put it in the old place, that in a couple of days we will need to find people to help, because 8 acres will keep this household busy for a while. In the afternoon I check how the rice is drying, since that determines when we can thresh it. Without machinery there is no clever way to do any of it, so we do it the way every household here does. Afterward I walk up to inspect my own mountain forest, because the green jade pears come off the trees in a little over a month, and they matter more than anything else I own. From the very beginning I ringed those fields with thorn vine, which grows easily and whose thorns tear skin and leave a numbness behind them. Trained up bamboo poles over several years, that vine is now a wall 4 or 5 meters high and a foot thick, with exactly 1 door in it. I have also set a few crude mechanisms inside. Every evening, after my last look around, I lock the door and set them. At night that forest is black and you cannot see your own hands in it. Anyone who comes over the wall with theft in mind and forces that door is going to have a very poor night. A few days later, the rice has been through all its stages and is stored in the house, and I start hiring hands for the 8 acres I have just bought. The rice already standing in those fields, minus what goes to tax, counts as mine. At dusk, Jin-yogu comes running along the ridge, out of breath shouting that my wife is starting. I do not say a word to him. I'm already gone. Behind me, he manages to get out that he needs to rest first. Then he sees how far ahead I am, gives up, and comes after me with his arms going like a dog trying to swim. I can hear Baek-jung before I reach the doorway. Seo-yeon is inside helping, and she comes out just as I am going in and blocks me. She calls me cousin and tells me the midwife has already arrived and I am not to go in, because a man present at a birth is inauspicious. Then she gives me a job, which is to boil kettles of water, as many as possible. All I actually want is to see how my wife is doing, but this is not the moment to argue, so I go to the kitchen, get the firewood lit, and start boiling. This is not Baek-jung's first time, and I am still not calm about it. Jin-yogu arrives, pours himself a bowl of water without asking anybody, and drinks the whole thing in one go. Then he looks at my face and tells me not to worry, because my wife has always been strong and this will go smoothly. Then he produces a small porcelain bottle and hands it over, and inside it is a key and blood pill, brought from his own house in case anything went wrong. I tell him he thinks ahead. I do not decline it, because the herbs I keep for supplementing chi and blood are not in the same class as this. I feel steadier with it in my hand, which is when I remember to ask where my boys are. He says he took them to his house and they are probably wrecking the place with his son right now. I tell him I have written this favor down, and that if there is ever anything I can help with, he only has to say. He says that as a matter of fact, there is a thing he wants to ask me about, then stops himself and says, his sister-in-law giving birth is more important. I agree, and my mind is nowhere near the conversation. Heaven and earth are wide, but nothing in either of them is bigger than my wife having a child. Inside, they are telling her to push. Seo-yeon is telling her it is nearly done, and then there is a sound out of her that goes through the wall and through me with it. I stand in the kitchen with 2 kettles and hear all of it. Seo-yeon puts her head around the door and shouts to ask whether the water is ready. I am already carrying it over. I hand the kettles across, ask how it is going, get told almost, and then the door goes shut in my face. Time does what time does at moments like that, which is nothing at all, very slowly. Then they tell her the head is out. Then there is another cry that is not hers. It is a boy, and both of them are safe. The midwife comes out carrying a basin of bloody water, tired, and tells me to go in and look at them. I go straight to the bed where Baek-jung is wrung out and barely has her eyes open, and I take her hand and tell her she has worked hard. She tells me it is not hard and that bearing children for the Seo family is what she is here to do, which makes it considerably worse rather than better. So I just tell her to rest, and she closes her eyes. Then Seo-yeon puts the baby into my arms, and I stand in my own bedroom making noises at him that I would be embarrassed to have anyone else hear. Later, my father-in-law's household arrives, and the room fills with people leaning over one small red face. Baek-bu asks me kindly whether I have a name ready. I do. Seo Myung-hyun, for a bearing that is radiant and brilliant, and at home he will be called Dandu. I tip the midwife and she leaves. Then Jin-yogu's family goes, and then my wife's family. Once Dandu is settled, Jin-yogu brings my other 2 back over. Dolly looks into the crib and reports with visible disdain that his little brother's skin is all wrinkled like a small old man. I tell him he looked exactly the same. Baek-jung laughs from the bed, where the chi and blood pill has already put the color back into her face. She has enough strength now to want to get up, which I refuse to allow. Dolly, having taken a hit he did not expect, touches his own cheek with some doubt. Then I tell Wani that today his father is keeping his promise, and that he needs to tell me which rooster it was. The instant he understands that chicken and chicken soup are in his immediate future, the boy becomes a different animal. He has my hand and is towing me out the door, and I tell Dolly to look after his mother, and he pats his chest and tells me not to worry. Once the patty is settled, it is time for the green jade pears, and the baskets start coming down out of the forest and into the house. Green jade pears sit right at the bottom edge of what could be called a spiritual fruit. They fall short of the real thing only because there is not enough spiritual chi in this ground to finish the job. Even so, 1.5 acres of them fetches an amount of silver that would frighten most of this village. They sell best in Chonggang County Town, and even in the prefectural city they are not cheap. The problem is that Chonggang County Town is 180 miles from here, with bandits on that road often enough that I do not care to test it. The bigger problem is that my former employer developed an interest in these pears. So last year I went to them first and sold the whole crop willingly, which took away any excuse to come and make trouble for me. You do not fear a thief stealing, you fear a thief thinking. Third Master Seo comes to my courtyard in person, a slightly plump man in his 40s, with a short growth of beard. I tell him respectfully that this year's crop comes to about 7,000 pounds. He notes that it is more than last year, and I tell him the yield has more or less reached its ceiling unless we expand the planting. As he knows, that is not an easy thing to do with green jade pear. He nods and says we will use last year's price, and I say that is no problem. He tells his people to start weighing, and that if the figures come out clean, the silver will be settled on the spot. The estate's servants weigh it out, and it does not take long. Standing beside Third Master Seo the whole time is a young man in brocade with his eyes burning at those baskets. And when he turns those eyes on me, what is in them is contempt. The weight is correct, and money and goods change hands. Then Third Master Seo tells me my skill is genuinely impressive, and asks whether I would sell the estate the secret recipe for growing green jade pear at a high price. I tell him I have experience but truly no recipe. Then I tell him that if he needs it, I will tell him everything I know, but that I had a run of luck and cannot promise the trees would survive a second attempt. Then I put the last piece where he can see it. Spending 6 or 7 years, or longer, and ending with nothing would not only fail Third Master Seo, it would shame my dead father. He lowers his head, thinks about it, then smiles and says he was only asking. He has other business, so he takes his leave, and I walk the whole party out to the road and stand there until they are well gone before I let my shoulders down. Once they are clear of my gate, the young man in brocade finally lets it out. He wants to know why his father is being so polite to an ordinary commoner, and points out that I used to be nothing but a long-term farmhand eating out of their house. Then he asks why they do not simply take the recipe, since surely I would not dare refuse. His father asks him whether he genuinely believes the Seo estate is the sky over Dongseo village. Third Master Seo turns and looks at his eldest son, and the disappointment in his face is not hidden at all. He tells him to set aside whether the recipe exists, because green jade pears are in fact very difficult to raise. The only people he has heard of who hold the method are some of the great families in the prefectural city. Does his son really believe a man alone worked it out in a handful of years? He says I was right about one thing, which is that 7 or 8 years and a mountain of labor and money ending in nothing is simply not worth it. And there are ready-made pears here to buy and turn around into the county town for hundreds of ounces of profit. He asks whether his son can name an easier way to make money than that. His son allows that his father makes sense. Seeing the boy is still not really convinced, Third Master Seo tells him not to underestimate me, and mentions that I have even been noticed by his own grandfather. Then he says the thing that matters, which is that the Seo estate stands on its credibility, and if his son ruins that over a few pears, he will not be polite about it. Since old Master Seo died, the estate has not produced a strong head of house, and is coasting on what was built before. There are descendants in that clan now who spend in idle, and the whole thing has started, very quietly, to slide downhill. At home, Baekjung wants to know how the sale went. Better than last year, I tell her, since they are not ordinary pears and the county town cannot get enough of them, and I show her the silver notes. She puts a hand flat on her chest and says she can breathe now, because she had genuinely been afraid the estate would simply take them. I tell her that should not happen, though who knows about later. She asks what I mean. I tell her Third Master Seo's eldest son, Seo Do, appears to have developed some ideas. That puts the worry straight back into her face, and she asks what we should do. I take her hand and tell her not to fret, because Third Master Seo is a sensible man and will not burn a reputation the estate spent generations building over a crop of fruit. She tells me I am amazing. Then she says, the thing she has clearly been carrying a while. With me here, she says the Seo family could one day be a gentry clan of its own, the way the estate is. I go over to Jin Iogu's house to settle the pill. His courtyard has him laid out on a reclining chair under the eaves, with the farming season behind him and nothing in front of him. He is off that chair the moment he sees me, asking why I am here instead of home keeping my wife company. I tell him I gave her the pill he brought, and she is mostly recovered. He calls his two out, and Danu and Bang Bang come and greet me politely, and I tell them they are good children and send them back inside to play. Then I take out a 100-ounce silver note and hold it out to him. He asks what this is. I tell him it is for the chi and blood pill, that I am aware of what one costs, and that without connections at a martial hall you cannot buy one at any price. Then I tell him he will take the money or he can stop calling me Brother Chion. That closes off everything he was about to say, and he takes it. Once it is away, I ask about the thing he wanted my help with. He hesitates a long time before he gets it out, which is that his elder brother wants to trade an Interforce manual for the method of growing green jade pear. In the years when I first wanted to plant them, not one person in this village thought it would work. Last year, when word got around that I had sold a serious quantity to the Seo estate, they finally understood that I had actually done it. The envy in Dongseo village has been considerable ever since. I ask whether this is Uncle Jin's idea. He waves both hands at once and says absolutely not, that his father does not agree and this is entirely his elder brother's idea. He says his brother must have heard that I have 1.5 acres of green jade pear bringing in real silver every year. Then his voice keeps dropping, until by the end he cannot look at me. He feels wretched about it. He has been afraid of his elder brother since childhood, and now that the man is a martial artist he is more afraid. So here he is, doing the asking. He tells me not to be angry and that he only mentioned it casually. Then he says he half regrets making his brother's case at all, because this is my own craft and the foundation my family stands on, and trading it for a manual would be badly one-sided. I think about Seo Yan while he says it. Jin Aogyu is honest, and his wife is extremely sharp, and she is not the sort to spend an extra sentence on anyone without a reason to. She can technically call me cousin, and both of us know exactly how thin that is. Our two houses passed out of mourning relationship generations ago and have barely spoken since my grandfather's time. Her family did well, moved to Cheonggang County town, and runs a shop or two inside the walls. In the years before she married Jinyogu, she had nothing to do with my household at all, and when we met it was a nod and 2 words about the weather. I did not even know she was any relation of mine. Then last year she began visiting, and then we were relatives. I tell Jin Yogu that a trade is not out of the question, for his sake and Uncle Jin's. He lights up and asks whether I mean it, and I tell him to let me finish, because I have conditions. First, Uncle Jin has to witness it, and it has to be a fair trade both sides enter willingly. Second, exactly like practicing from an Interforce manual, where even 50 or 60% is no guarantee, the method I hand over carries no guarantee either. If it fails afterward, nobody comes to my house about it. Third, the manual has to be a genuinely superior martial art, and 10 chi and blood pills come with it. He says he understands, and that he will go to the county town tomorrow, then corrects himself and says today. After I leave, he goes to his father's house, has Seo Yan come back to mind the children, and sets off. At the Black Tiger Martial Arts Hall, someone tells Jin Dae-myung that his younger brother is outside asking for him. He repeats the words back as a question, because it is not a sentence he expects to hear. When he gets out there and sees Jin Yogu, he asks what on earth he is doing here. He has never thought much of this brother and does not put a great deal of effort into hiding it. Jin Yogu tells him I have agreed, with 3 conditions, and repeats them honestly and completely. Jin Dae-myung stands there working through it. Then he thinks that I am exactly what his father says I am, a man who refuses to take a loss of any size. Having his own father witness the trade, as though the Jin household would come and make trouble if the trees failed. He has looked into green jade pear himself and knows the cultivation is genuinely difficult, and that if it works it becomes something a family lives on for generations. The same, he thinks, is true of an Interforce manual, and the farmer wants a superior one of all things. The man is ignorant, he decides. The better the manual, the higher the aptitude it demands before it gives anything at all. So he says there is no problem, that he happens to have come into a superior Interforce manual not long ago, and it can go to me. He tells Jin Yeogu to go back and say that in 7 days he will take leave, come home, and make the trade. 7 days later, I am sitting in Uncle Jin's house, with everything I know about green jade pear written out from memory, and Jin Dae-myung across from me. Uncle Jin says we have both thought this through, in the tone of a man who is not sure either of us has. I tell him with a smile that I want the manual and Brother Dae-myung wants the method, and both sides come out ahead. Jin Dae-myung tells his father to stop going on, since his son has a household and a career of his own and can manage his own judgment. Uncle Jin curls his lip and tells us to get on with it. Then, and to confirm we each have what we came for before anyone signs, we trade. I open the porcelain bottle first and smell it, then pour the chi and blood pills out and count and inspect them before packing them back in. Then I take up the manual, and on the cover it says Minor Dragon Elephant Technique. An impressive name, I tell him, and then I open it and start reading with genuine pleasure. Jin Dae-myung glances up at me and finds the whole thing funny, because here is a farmer who has never practiced a day, with no martial artist anywhere near him, planning to teach himself. He tells me the manual comes out of the Dragon Elephant sect, which was destroyed a few years back, after which its manuals ended up loose in the world. He says his copy is hand-transcribed, but he can guarantee it is genuinely superior and that it even carries the follow-up, the innate Dragon Elephant formula. Then he tells me, in the voice of a man doing a kindness, that owning a manual does not make anybody a martial artist, and that talent and resources decide the rest. I thank Brother Dae-myung for his guidance, and say I have no problems on my end. He flips through my pages properly, and finds them written out in real detail, with site selection, humidity, climate, and fertilizer all explained, and says he has no problems either. Uncle Jin picks up his pipe, draws on it, breathes out a slow curl of smoke, and tells us to sign and press our fingerprints, and we both do. After I have gone, Jin Dae-myung tells his father to copy a version 2, since the family has mountain forest and might as well try. Uncle Jin declines and says Jin Iogu can copy it instead. Then he says that I am clever, and that since I told him my own grasp was not high, the real probability of success must be genuinely low. He does not have the energy for it. His son tells him he overestimates me, The world is full of capable and unusual people, his son says, and with these notes plus a few men in Chongqing County who know fruit trees, he refuses to believe it cannot be done. On the contrary, he says, the one overestimating himself is me, for thinking I can learn martial arts, and he asks how easy his father imagines the minor dragon elephant technique is to practice. Uncle Jin asks whether the manual was fake. His son says of course it is real, and that he spent a good deal of silver on it. That relaxes the old man, who puts one hand behind his back and takes his pipe in the other and prepares to go out for a walk. On his way, he says he can see both his son and I have our own little calculations running, that in a dozen years or more he has never once seen me come out of anything behind. Jin Daemyong keeps his face still and thinks, privately, that his father has not seen very many people in his old age. He asks himself what sort of formidable figure a village the size of Dongseo could possibly produce. The general outline of the minor dragon elephant technique runs to 4 lines. They speak of dragons rising and elephants treading, of water and fire refining true essence, and of the body's barriers and apertures joining heaven to earth. On the first reading, I find it obscure and close to useless. Fortunately, there are breathing instructions and 12 set forms underneath it, and those are practical. The breathing draws in through the nose as the dragon lifts to the crown, and out through the mouth as the elephant sinks to the soles. The body's triple furnace refines a true fire while a single breath of chi runs the lesser cycle. That I can work with. The first form is young dragon awakens its spine. You stand with the feet at shoulder width and breathe in with both arms lifted like a dragon's horns, then breathe out while the elbows drop and the palms press down. The second is elephant trunk curls water, held in a horse stance, the right arm spiraling up like a trunk on the inhale and chopping down across the body on the exhale. The third is fire dragon swings its tail, and it goes on from there. I practiced for several days and the progress is unremarkable, and the only measurable change is that I am eating considerably more. I already have dragon essence and tiger vigor, so in raw physical terms and in the strength of my blood I am not behind a martial artist to begin with. Still, something about this technique feels deep in a way I cannot yet name, and I suspect it wants years before it shows me anything. Dandu's full moon banquet arrives, and I am up early setting a large round table in the courtyard, with the plan to borrow another from next door if it comes to that. I also put out the small square tables and benches I built for the children myself. By evening, my wife and I are both in the kitchen when a familiar voice comes over the wall, and my father-in-law and mother-in-law are here. Baekjung tells me to go, since everything is prepared and only the cooking is left. I go out and greet them. The 2 boys who were supposed to be watching their little brother in the main room hear the voices and come tearing out to shout for their grandfather and grandmother. Baek-bu tells Dolly to come and be lifted, then declares he has put on serious weight and is a big person now. Wani immediately wants the same, so he gets picked up as well. My mother-in-law looks around for her daughter, hears she is in the kitchen, and goes to help her and leaves the 2 of us to talk. Baek-bu and I go into the main room to look at Dandu sleeping and rock the crib a little, and he tells me the crib is convenient and my craftsmanship is good. Then he asks what my plans are now that there is a 3rd one. I tell him that after the banquet I intend to expand the house first, and after that I will start thinking about reading and writing in martial arts. He says that food, clothing, housing, and transport come first for commoners like us, and that since I am putting books and martial arts after those, he can rest easy about the arrangement. I tell him I will still need him to remind and guide me, which pleases him enormously and which is exactly why I said it. Before long, my brother-in-law Baek Hwa arrives, and my sister-in-law Baek Bang with her family, and Uncle Jin and his wife, and Jin Iogu's household, all of them with congratulatory gifts. The courtyard fills up and turns loud in the best way. 4 or 5 children charge around screaming while the adults sit and talk about nothing, and everyone inside my walls tonight is family or close to it. When the banquet starts, I stand with my cup and thank them all for not looking down on us, and for coming to my unworthy son's full moon, and I drink mine off first. Then I wipe my mouth and tell them that everyone here is family or a close friend, so we can dispense with polite speeches, and I ask them to enjoy themselves properly. I tell my brother-in-law specifically not to be stingy with his own drinking tonight, and he tells me that since I have said it, nobody goes home sober. That gets the whole courtyard laughing. Jin Iogu and my brother-in-law come at me with cups immediately and with clear intent, while Uncle Jin and Baek-bu toast me as a formality and then sensibly stay out of it. On the other side of the yard, Seo Yan and Baek Bang are asking Baekjung how she is recovering. The women eat and talk household matters, and it goes on until the moon is high. When Baek Hwa and Jin Iogu leave, neither man's legs are working, and without their wives holding them up, both would be asleep on the ground inside a minute. Baekjung is clearing the kitchen, and the 2 older boys played themselves into exhaustion and went to bed early. So I come into the main room, stand over the crib a while, and then turn my hand over, and a book with a black cover is in it. This is the Bloodline Genealogy, and it currently runs to 2 thin pages. I turn to the second, take a needle, prick Dandu's fingertip, and let 1 drop fall onto it. A line writes itself out of nothing. Seo Myonghyun, second generation of the Seo family, with a spiritual root of incomplete 5 elements and no cultivation aptitude, talent none and bloodline none. Above him, Dolly and Wani read exactly the same. I am not disappointed. For ordinary commoners to produce cultivation aptitude, a special talent, or a bloodline is roughly a 1 in 10,000 event. I have now failed to win that lottery 3 times, which is only what the odds said would happen. Dandu, having been stabbed, objects to it loudly enough to bring his mother in, and the genealogy sinks back into my body and is gone before the door opens. She asks what is wrong. I tell her he is probably hungry, and that she should feed him while I finish the kitchen, and she thanks me and takes him. Later, with everything done, we finally get into bed, and she settles her head onto my arm. She tells me that every family brought gifts today, and most of them gave 20 or 30 copper coins. Jinny Ogu's family put in a full ounce of silver, and she cannot work out why. An ounce. That surprises me a little too. And then I understand it and tell her to accept it without worrying. Then I explain that I made a deal with Jin Daemyong, trading my green jade pair notes for a top-tier inner force manual and 10 chi and blood pills. That Jin Eogu's household almost certainly copied the notes as well and feels awkward about it. She comes off my arm and sits straight up. She wants to know whether I've lost my mind, because that method is something a family passes down as an heirloom, and how could I sell it? She adds that an inner force manual is not worth it either, since whether anyone can actually practice the thing is another question entirely. I reach up and flick the end of her nose and ask whether she has ever once seen her husband come out behind. Then I explain it properly. Cultivation notes are useful, but who is holding them decides everything. And the more carefully a thing like that is hidden, the more people want to know what is being hidden. One day this household could take real harm over it. I remind her what I told her not long ago about the Seo estate. Now that Uncle Jin's family is standing in front of it, nobody is going to move on us for a while. They will all sit back and wait to see whether the Jin family can grow the trees. If the Jin family fails, the whole village drops the idea, and if they succeed and someone still wants the method, I will simply sell it again. She says that is how it is, then, and tells me I am truly clever, and I decide not to argue with her about that. In the morning, I teach the 2 older boys their characters, working through the primer line by line. I copied it out twice, so each of them has his own, and I built a set of tables and chairs sized to them so they can sit properly. I read a line, they find it on the page, and they read it back to me. Their voices go all around the small courtyard, and the effect on the chickens is that they come straight out of the coop and start patrolling the yard for food. Above the kitchen, a thread of blue smoke climbs. After breakfast, Baekjung takes the baby and supervises the pair of them copying characters, and they work at it stroke by stroke with enormous concentration. Meanwhile, I start on the house, designing it, gathering materials, finding hands to help, and thoroughly enjoying myself. Even so, I carve out time every day to walk the fields and the forest, check on things, pull weeds, and then put in an hour on the minor dragon elephant technique. Heaven rewards diligence, only pays the man who keeps showing up. A month and a half later, the house is unrecognizable. 5 main rooms and a central hall around half an acre of courtyard, which puts us solidly in the upper middle of Dongseo village. A new house calls for a housewarming, which means another banquet, and, naturally, more gifts. The years go past the way they do, quietly and all at once, and then it is the year-end sacrifice. Between my teaching every day and Baekjong's supervision, Dolly has learned every character in the primer and can write more than half of them from memory. Wani is younger and still at the stage of recognizing them. After the sacrifice, I finally decide to bestow a talent on Dolly. Once the 2nd generation was born, the bloodline genealogy gained another page, and with it 5 destiny talents came into being. They are innate divine strength, seeking advantage and avoiding harm, and ways to make money. The last 2 are Eagle Eye and Whispers of All Spirits. All 5 are unowned, which means every one of them could go to me. The thought crosses my mind and leaves again almost immediately. Even if I took all 5, I am immortal and I have no spare body to spend them through. I already carry 3, one of which is of very little use to me at this point in my life. If a family is going to grow into something, its strength has to be spread across all of it and pulled in one direction. That is the road that lasts. So I call in my eldest son and drop the gentleness I usually wear. I tell him he is the legitimate eldest, that one day this family will rest on him, and that his father intends him for the martial path, and I ask whether he objects. He feels the weight in the room change. He lifts that small face, looks straight back at me without flinching, and says his father has taught him a great many principles these past months, and Dolly understands them. He says he will follow all of my instructions and set the example for his younger brothers. He says he will not disgrace the Seo family and make his father lose face. I take out the genealogy and tell him to put a drop of blood on it. There is nobody in the main room but the 2 of us, and nobody else is permitted through the door. He trusts me completely and does it without a question, and when the page drinks the blood he is visibly startled, and still does not ask. Then I tell him to kneel, close his eyes, and repeat after me. I give him the prayer our family says to its ancestors. It speaks of offering in this year with piety and of virtue passing down to descendants. Then it asks the spirits to descend brightly and protect the family's name. He says it back to me, line by line. As the old ancestor of this generation and the actual holder of the genealogy, I can put a talent on myself directly. But everyone else has to come through the rite. When I preside over it, I choose which talent lands. And when I do not, the genealogy chooses at random. When Dolly finishes the prayer, I feel a translucent thread run off him and into the book. The genealogy gives off a faint cyan light and starts to bestow something at random, and I stop it. Then I put my finger between my son's brows and give him both innate divine strength and eagle eye. If he is taking the martial road, then every talent that serves that road goes to him and nowhere else. Innate divine strength will push his strength further past ordinary people every year he lives, and slowly rebuild his tendons and bones into something built for this. Eagle Eye does what the name says, and will make his sight sharp and deep enough to pick apart anything he looks at. With both of those on him, the weapon my son eventually masters is going to be the bow, because that is simply how the arithmetic falls. I tell him to open his eyes, and when he does, he looks for the black book and cannot find it. I ask how it felt, and he says it went cool between his brows and then stopped. And then he wants to know what the passage actually meant. I tell him it is the prayer our family offers its ancestors, asking them to keep us at peace and our fortune flourishing, that he is to hold it in memory and pass it down the generations. He says he knows. Father. Then I ruffle his hair and lay out what the rest of his life looks like starting tomorrow. Up early, martial arts and archery with me, then reading and writing with his brother. Then out with me to walk the paddy in the mountain forest, because I do not require him to be skilled at agriculture. I do require him to understand it well enough to decide something when a decision is needed. Everything left over goes to martial arts. Then I ask whether he can do that, and he tells me that Dolly can. There is a hardness in that small face that I did not put there, and I am glad of it. Between my example and my instruction, he has turned into a child who can take hardship. Outside of his reading and the time he spends with his brother, most of his day is spent at my shoulder, learning what I know and how to carry himself. Wani decides he is being excluded and makes a scene about going along, and I refuse and speak sharply to him about it. It is his brother who fixes it by promising that when he practices in the yard, Wani can be there with him. That is enough, and from then on the boy spends every day waiting for his brother to come back to him. A few nights later, Baekjung tells me our son is only 6 and asks whether I am being too hard on him. She says she has seen the tiredness in his face these last days, and it hurts her to look at. I tell her that since my wife intends to be the indulgent mother, her husband is obliged to be the strict father. If the pair of us pamper him, I would like to know what sort of person we expect to end up with. She says perhaps I am right, but... And I put my hand up and stop her there, because when a thing needs to be hard, it is hard. The worry does not leave her eyes, so I soften it. Our Dolly is stubborn, I tell her, exactly like his father. And after he struggles through this stretch, he will adapt, and in a few more months, the talent will start showing anyway. Then I tell her we are not short of silver at the moment, so there is no reason to economize. That meat goes on the table every day from now on, because a boy practicing martial arts cannot do without it. She says she understands. The next morning, the dark has not fully drained out of the sky, and the east has only just gone the pale blue-green of a crab shell. In the courtyard, the back of my cotton shirt is already soaked through and dark, and my breath goes out in thin white arrows. My son is beside me copying the movements with arms like small lotus roots, and the results are crooked in every direction. I stop when I need to and correct him. When he does it well, I say so, and when he does it badly, I say that too, and not gently. There is a set to his eyes that does not move, and whatever he feels about being corrected, he swallows it and does not let a single piece of it show. Half an hour later, we wash, and then it is time for books. And 2 clear children's voices go up through the thin mist and put the sparrows out from under the eaves. Another new day, and there will be a great many more of them. 3 years. Dolly is 9 now and has shot up to nearly 4.5 feet, which makes him look like a half-grown lad instead of a child. He has the breathing method and all 12 forms of the minor dragon elephant technique and practices them without needing me there. If I had to name what has changed most about him, it is his strength in his eyes. Innate divine strength is not a joke of a talent, and there are grown men in this village who cannot match my 9-year-old. His eyes have gone sharp and deep in a way that unsettles people, so boys his own age get quiet around him, and so do adults if they catch him with his face set. That gaze goes into a person like a blade. He keeps it sheathed almost all the time, having watched his father and drawn the correct conclusion about staying low and steady. In March, after the spring rain, the whole valley comes back to life at once. The washed earth goes a dark shining brown, and the shepherd's purse on the field ridges holds its water droplets up on new leaves. Egrets skim the flooded paddy and stab down through the surface, and come up with a silver crucian carp. Field mice come out of the wet haystacks to steal the new pea shoots and get chased off by the old yellow dog that guards the water. Across the whole flooded expanse, commoners in bamboo hats bend over the rows replanting seedlings, and their bare feet come out of the mud with a sucking sound each time. I am working the paddy and Dolly is right beside me setting seedlings. Wani comes along the ridge carrying a large teapot and 2 lidded cups, and announces that Mother sent herbal tea for his father and his big brother. I look up and tell Dolly to come ashore and rest a while. He tells me he is not tired and that this row is nearly done and he will rest when this side is finished. As you like, I tell him, and go up myself and take the cup Wani pours and drink most of it in one go. Wani watches his brother working and observes, with feeling that his big brother really is earnest. Unlike some people, I tell him, who are shaped like a monkey and cannot settle for a minute, he puts his tongue out at me and laughs, and then announces he is going to help too. He gets his shoes off, rolls his trousers to the knee, wades in, and heads for his brother shouting that he has come to help. Dolly looks up, smiles, thanks him and tells him to walk slower and not fall in. Standing on the ridge watching the two of them, I am about as content as a man gets. My eldest is steady and sits in the middle of this family like a mountain, and that is what a heritage gets passed to. My second is loud and cannot sit still, and is quick, bright, and flexible in a way his brother is not. My youngest is 3, running everywhere on his own legs now, and cheerful with it. 3 years into the minor dragon elephant technique, every session now sends a thread of warmth all the way through me, and that is internal force. To be a third-rate martial artist, a man has to clear 36 acupoints, and I have cleared 30-odd. The manual says that clearing all 365 in the body puts you at Huchian peak, where internal force runs the whole heavenly cycle and regenerates without end. First class needs 300, and second rate needs 108. Dolly is a little slower, and has 20. His advantage is his age, because clearing acupoints young pays compound interest, and him passing me eventually is not a question of whether. With Wani in the water too, the planting is done by midday and the 3 of us walk home very pleased with ourselves, and hit a wall of cooking smell at our own gate. Chicken soup, Wani says, and braised carp, and his stomach makes a noise loud enough to hear. Under the eaves, Dandu spots us and shouts into the house that Dad and his big brothers are back, then runs at me calling for me. Wani rubs his head and asks, "What about the rest of us?" Dandu informs him that he always takes his things so he is not calling him anything, then turns away and cheerfully shouts for his eldest brother instead. Wani says he does not believe he cannot cure this, hauls the little one in, and tickles him until he begs, and I send all 3 to wash. In the kitchen, Baekjeon tells me to go and eat, since her last dish is nearly done. I tell her I smelled all of it from a long way off and that marrying her was my good fortune. She calls me she has something to say, and takes my hand and puts it on her stomach. I sit there for a second, then turn and look at her and blink. Another one, I say. Childbirth is hard and I had honestly not planned on more. And she gives me a look with a great deal of reproach in it, and points out whose fault this is. Then she says that once a thing is being done, it cannot be entirely prevented, and asks whether her husband does not want it. I tell her of course I want it, and tell her that since it has come to the Seo family, it is fate. 7 or 8 more, I tell her, and this house could still feed them all. That is not bragging. In the last 2 years, I have bought another 3 acres of farmland and 6.5 acres of mountain forest. The farmland is dry field rather than paddy, and runs over 60 ounces of silver an acre. Mountain forest is cheaper at 40 or 50, though you have to fell and clear it yourself, before a single fruit tree goes in. What comes off it now runs the whole year. Strawberries and loquats in spring, watermelon and lychee and peaches in summer, persimmons and pomelos in autumn, and sugarcane and winter jujube in winter. The tree fruit takes a couple of years to come good, while the watermelon and strawberries and sugarcane produce heavily every season under my hands. Fruit alone brings in hundreds of ounces of silver a year, largely because mine simply grow better than what other households manage. People in this village and the villages around it buy from the Seo family first and from everyone else second. We now hold 10 acres of paddy, 3 acres of farmland, and 6.5 acres of mountain forest and land, which makes us a comfortably wealthy household, well-fed and well-dressed. A few days later at Jin Iogu's house, his wife comes back from inspecting their mountain forest and finds him laid out on the lounge chair without a care in the world. Her temper goes straight up, and she takes the broom from behind the door and starts for him. He is off that chair and running with a fluency that says he has done this many times. He wants to know what she is doing and asks her to say whatever it is with words instead of implements. Then he informs her, from a safe distance, that it is not that he could not beat her, only that a good man does not fight a woman. Then she gets going properly. She tells him that if he were as capable as I am, she would submit completely and hand him the running of everything. It is a pity, she says, that she was blind enough to fancy a good-for-nothing who cannot do martial arts, cannot do letters, and is no good at farming either. Then she asks what exactly he does besides sit down and eat their money. When their son and daughter come home from school and find this in progress, they are entirely used to it and walk straight over to my house. In our courtyard, Dolly stops what he is doing and looks up, and Wani comes out, takes one look and starts laughing. He asks whether Uncle Iogu and Auntie are performing again. Danyu sighs and says his old man really cannot compare to Uncle Cheon, and that he spends his life being chased around by his mother with a broom. Wani asks whether it is the usual complaint about idleness, and Bang Bang says in surprise that Wani is clever to have guessed it straight off. Their mother, she says, always compares their father to Uncle Cheon. Wani says his father is the most capable man in Dongseo village, and that Uncle Iogu's lazy temperament cannot possibly compare. That is the sort of thing he says about me constantly, and I try not to encourage it. Then he tells Danyu to lay it out, because he may have some ideas. Danyu repeats the whole argument. Wani thinks for a moment and says he has heard his father say green jade pears are not easy to grow, that his auntie has aimed too high with a speculative mind and was always going to lose on it. 3 years of the Jin family's money has gone into those trees, he says, and now that it is clear they are about to lose the lot, her temper has turned volatile. The trouble between husband and wife follows from that. His advice is that they persuade her to give the pears up. Danyu asks what they would grow instead. Follow the Seo family and grow ordinary melons and fruit, Wani tells him, so the household never has to worry about its own provisions and can sell the rest for money. Danyu says he does not know whether that will work, given his father's abilities, and then does not even want to finish the sentence. His father is useless at everything he tries, and unbeatable only at the dinner table, which is why even his own uncle looks down on him a little. Wani tells him that his father says every person has their own talents and should be guided along whatever advantage they have. Then he says his father once told him a story about a man exactly like Uncle Iogu, an ordinary sort who went into business. He made a fortune and became a famous wealthy merchant in the southern prefectural city, treated politely even by the officials there. Danyu asks what the story is called. Wani tells him it is called The Prodigious Life of Jin Yogu. There is a short silence while all of them work out whether they are allowed to laugh. Then Wani lays out the actual proposal, and it is not a child's proposal. He points out that of everyone in Dongseo village, the man closest to his father is Uncle Iogu. So Uncle Iogu should give up the green jade pears and work with his father instead. The Jin family hires the labor and plants, while his father provides the guidance. And the produce from both households gets sold together. His father's mind is not on trade, so Uncle Iogu handles the selling. And as for profit, he suggests 7 to the Seo family and 3 to the Jin family. Dolly, who has been listening quietly, asks why 7 and 3. Danyu asks the same thing, and adds that since Brother Cheon and his father are good brothers, why is it not half and half, or split by what each side puts in? He has been at school a few years now and is not a child who can be waved off. Wani explains it, and does not hurry. First, if Uncle Iogu wants good fruit and vegetables without his father, he still has to hire someone who knows the work, and that costs money. If he simply plants and hopes, then he can look around Dongseo village and name the household that has ever made money doing that, and not losing money would already be a good year. And although his father and Uncle Aogu are good brothers, even real brothers settle their accounts, and Danyu's own eldest uncle would not carry the family for free either. His father is a famous farmer for miles around, and hiring him is not cheap. Occasional advice is one thing and regular guidance is another, and his father is a busy man. Second, the 2 households' produce goes out under one name. Setting aside how well the Jin family eventually grows anything, the Seo family's fruit and vegetables already have a reputation. Not only does Dongseo village buy from us first, so do the villages around it. He says his father taught him a term for that, which is the brand effect. Then he explains it with the century-old apothecaries and jewelers in the county town, and asks whether Danyu's parents do not go to exactly those shops first. More custom means better margin, and if the Jin family sells alone, Danyu can work out for himself what they end up with. Then he offers the alternative, which is that the 2 families sell separately, and each household keeps everything its own land produces. The Jin family would still get to trade on his father's name, at 3 and 7 or 2 and 8. Dolly's eyes come alight, because he has seen what his brother has built. It helps Uncle Aoju's family and opens a second stream of income for ours at the same time. Uncle Aoju's household has far more connections than we do, and with my guidance the quality will at minimum not be bad, and once the scale comes up the yearly profit stops being small. I am standing in the doorway of the main hall listening to all of this, and I am genuinely startled. I have given the boy a certain amount of guidance. A 7-year-old following it this far and arriving at a structure like that on his own is not guidance but talent. Ways to make money, I think. That one belongs to him and nobody else. I smile to myself and settle it there. Bang Bang is looking at Wani with her eyes shining and telling him he is too clever, and says she is going straight home to put the idea to her parents. Danyu goes with her. I call Wani over, and both boys turn and say Dad at the same time. and Wani comes across and asks what it is. I tell him the idea just now was well considered, and ask how he arrived at it. He asks whether his father thinks it is good too, and the moment I say so his face cannot hold the grin, and he tells me he was only pondering blindly. So I ask him the real question, which is what he wants for himself. Does he like trade, or does he want the martial road like his brother, or to learn farming with me? He thinks it over honestly. He says he used to learn martial arts from his brother because it looked fun, and then he understood how hard it was. He cannot keep at it every single day the way his brother does. He says farming is not for him either. And then he says that if he can choose, he would rather do business, because what he actually likes is counting money. I tell him to come with me, and I tell Dolly to stand outside the house and let nobody in. At Jin Iogu's, the two of them have calmed down, and the children come back and repeat Wani's idea. Jin Iogu slaps his own thigh and says the method is excellent and that following Brother Cheon they cannot possibly lose. Then he marvels at how Wani's brain is put together, 7 years old with thoughts like that. He concludes it is what comes of being around me, since I was thoughtful from a young age myself. Seo Yan makes a sound like a laugh and says, only a reckless idiot agrees to something before thinking about it. He asks what is wrong with it, and whether she would really refuse a thing that good. So she tells him it is his own fault for coveting Brother Cheon's green jade pears in the first place. 3 years of labor and money poured into the ground. Then she asks what they have to show for it besides half-dead saplings, and tells him that if he is unwilling, they can divide the family property. She will work with Brother Cheon herself while he stands guard over his pear trees. Her brows come together until there are small creases over the bridge of her nose, and she stops talking and starts calculating. In a handful of years, I have run the Seo family up past Jiniogu entirely, and I am closing on her father-in-law's household. And when the old man goes, Jiniogu is not the eldest legitimate son, so he receives a portion and nothing more. Attached to the Seo family, though, there is a real road to wealth in front of them. The trouble is that her own standing with me is no better than ordinary. We call each other cousin, and both of us know exactly how thin that is, and relatives past 5 degrees of mourning are worth less than a neighbor you actually know. So her tone changes completely and goes soft. She says she never said she disagreed, only that this was children's talk in the end, and it still requires cousin's consent. She tells him to think the cooperation and the profit split all the way through first, and then go and talk to cousin properly. He does not turn up with nothing in his head, and only knows how to nod. She adds that he is nearly 30 and ought to be established by now, and that he should not let her cousin look down on him. He says his own elder brother might look down on him, but Brother Cheon never will, because the two of them ran around this village together before either of them had proper trousers. Then he allows that what she said is right anyway, and says he will think it over carefully and come to my house in a couple of days. At which point both children's stomachs go off at once, and Seo Yan smacks her own forehead, having been argued into forgetting lunch entirely. She sends them to eat at Uncle Cheon's before school, and Jinny Ogu announces that in that case he will come too. She asks whether he has any shame at all, and whether their own house has nothing to eat. He says fine then, he will not go, and tells her to hurry up because he is hungry. Danyu and Bang Bang arrive at my house again exactly at lunch, and Baekjung takes them in without a word about it. My two do not attend the village school and study at home in whatever time they have. Sometimes Danyu and his sister bring their textbooks and assignments over for the brothers to work from. Both my boys are quick and their learning is not behind the schools, and what they see of the world is considerably wider. Real work sharpens them in a way a schoolroom does not. 3 days later, at dusk, Jin Yogu comes through my gate with the sunset behind him and a bottle of good sorghum wine in his hand. Baekjong is on the walkway in front of the main hall, supervising Wani's calligraphy, and he calls out to ask whether Brother Cheon is back. She tells him I should be back shortly and that he may as well sit and wait and eat with us. He thanks her and hands over the wine and admits he stole it from his father, who has had it hidden more than 10 years and does not have much left. She takes it inside laughing and brings him out a stool. He looks at Wani's characters and says they are far better than his Danyu's, and that it is my wife who knows how to teach. She says she has no such ability and that I taught them hand over hand, and that all she does is make sure the work I set gets finished every day. My learning, she adds, is good enough to teach at the school, and she laughs while she says it, because she is never happier than when somebody praises me in front of her. I come through the gate with Dolly, both of us with hose on our shoulders and our trousers rolled, and my son carrying a wooden bucket. He hands the bucket to his mother and tells her, pleased with himself, that he and his father caught a good many field snails today. She looks in and agrees that it is a good many. Then she points out that snails have to be kept a day or two to clean themselves out. Otherwise all they are good for is drinking snacks for his father and Uncle Iogu. I ask Jin Iogu whether he has something to tell me and suggest we talk inside, since dinner will be a while yet. Dandu comes pattering over the moment he sees me, wanting to be played with. Dolly scoops him up in one arm and tells him that his eldest brother will practice boxing for him to watch. Dandu claps and says he wants boxing. Then Dolly starts, and the air in the courtyard begins cracking. Jin Iogu stops in the doorway and stares at my 9-year-old for a long moment. He says Dolly is amazing and that it already feels like watching a martial artist, and that it cannot be many years before he becomes a real one. His horizons are limited, which is the kindest way to put it. If his elder brother were standing here, he would see at a glance that my son has already produced internal force and needs only 36 acupoints cleared to be third rate. Years from now, Jin Damyong will be 36 years old and still only second class, because he has martial talent, but it is ordinary, and second class is very likely where his whole life stops. Jin Iogu adds that his brother claims the Jin family could not cultivate the minor dragon elephant technique at all. In his opinion, it must be his brother's own talent that is lacking. The next time they meet, he intends to mock him thoroughly, and also to ask how those green jade pear trees are doing. I tell him to get to business and ask what brought him. He says it is what Wani said to his two the other day, and that he thinks it is very sound. He says the Seo family has been built up to a certain scale now, and if I want it larger, I cannot possibly do all of it alone. That he is relatively idle, so whatever I have no time for can be handed to him. That way, he says, everyone is pleased. I ask whether Uncle Jin agreed. He says his father thinks highly of me and agreed the moment it was mentioned, and remarked that his son's brain is finally opened, so I ask him how he wants to structure it. He picks the second option, which is that he sells the produce of both households. My family's profits stay entirely with my family, and on his family's profits we split 3 and 7. 3/10, I tell him, is not a small amount to hand over, and I ask whether he can really part with it. He pats his chest and says even 4/10 would be fine. I tell him I appreciate the sentiment, and then I tell him 2/10 is enough. The Jin family handles its own planting, and the acreage does not matter to me. I am only responsible for guidance, and his household does the selling while my household sends someone along. Not because I do not trust him, I tell him, but because only that way is it actually fair. He asks whether I am going to be doing it personally, and whether I could even manage the time. Naturally not me, I tell him. My Wani. The boy has real talent for trade, and having him spend time following Jin Yogu around and seeing how the world works is an excellent trial run. He agrees that Wani is not bad at all, and says that if the boy had not put the suggestion forward, he would never have thought of any of it. Then I add one more thing, which is that he should go to his brother and hire a few honest, reliable martial artists for the days they are out selling. That nothing goes wrong on the road. He says I think things through. Then, after a moment, he tells me something I did not have. He heard from his father not long ago that a disaster has broken out in the West, and a good many refugees are heading in this direction. Is that so? I say, and narrow my eyes. I decide, I will divine that when I have a quiet morning. Through the busy season, I've been spending my daily reading on things like tomorrow's weather, which now looks like a waste of a talent. With the arrangement settled, the thing Jin Iogu has been carrying around finally comes off him, and he says that tonight, at last, he will sleep properly. He then gets comprehensively drunk, and it falls to Dolly to walk him home. On the way, a figure comes out of the dark and puts a stick across my son's head with everything behind it. Jin Iogu goes straight down with a complaint. Dolly, holding his head, turns and looks properly. And the night is thick, but his eyes are not ordinary eyes. In the corner, he finds a beggar in rags with a wooden stick, shaking slightly, staring at him with a green wolfish light in his eyes. The disbelief on that man's face is total, because he swung as hard as he could, and the boy is still standing. Dolly shouts and demands to know what kind of person he is, and the beggar turns and runs. My son wants to give chase and cannot, because Jin Iogu has both arms around his legs and will not let go, and is calling for his wife. Dolly is not going to leave a drunk man lying in a lane, so he gets him up and takes him home. Then he tells Seo Yan not to go out at night, and mentions that even he was ambushed in the dark. That if the two of them had not been in good condition, everything of value on them would have been taken and it might not have stopped there. She says, is that so? And tells him to be careful going back himself. When he gets home, he tells me about it. A beggar, I say. It seems things are going to be unsettled for a while, and I tell him that for now nobody in this house goes out at night without a reason. He says he understands, father. Refugees have been pouring into the dozen or so counties around Xianggang for weeks now. What happened to my son on that lane was not an isolated case. It is only that people going out at night rarely carry much, and since nobody could be found afterward and nobody died, every one of those matters was quietly dropped. For several days I have been seeing figures near my walls who have no business being there. So I put nails and mouse traps along the base of the perimeter, and anyone climbing over is going to regret the landing. I also hung warning bells that ring the moment a trap goes off. Then this morning the reading comes up mediocre low. Tonight at midnight, 5 people will come over the wall intending to kill and rob. I take that about as well as anyone would. The Seo family has a fine reputation in Dongseo village, and none of the guards the Seo estate keeps, so being chosen is not remotely surprising. What I want to know is whether any of them is a martial artist, because nails and mousetraps handle refugees and would not do much against one. So I spend the afternoon building simple crossbows and mounting them under the eaves on both sides after dark. A single tripline fires the lot, and once they are set, I take the warning bells down. I walk my usual round today, and my mind is nowhere near the fields. Stone, I tell my son, there may be thieves tonight. A little before midnight, take your bow up onto the roof, watch for the opening, and kill them. Can you do it? He asks whether it is true. I tell him that if he believes his father, he does as his father says, because this concerns everyone under this roof. He does not ask a second question, and only says he understands and will do exactly what I tell him. He does not have a third-rate martial artist's strength yet. What he does have is innate divine strength, eagle eye, and a longbow. And in the dark from above, that combination is a genuine threat even to a second-class martial artist. Then he asks whether he should put poison on the arrowheads. I look at him, honestly surprised, and ask whether that will not sit badly with him. His eyes go sharp as a blade edge, and he says that anyone who threatens his family has to be dealt with completely, so there is no trouble later. I tell him to do it as he thinks best. Night. The moon slides behind cloud, and the stars go dim and unsteady. On the bed, my blood is running hot, and I lie there quietly with it. My wife offers to help me with it, and I decline, telling her that this particular fire has another use tonight and is better saved. She is puzzled by that. Her mind almost certainly goes straight to other women, which is not where I would have sent it. I tell her to rest early since we are up before dawn tomorrow. She decides I am not that kind of man, lies down easily, and is asleep in minutes. In the next room, my son lights a candle, wipes down his bow and arrows, and coats the heads with poison. That room has the air of a barracks the night before a battle, close and dark and waiting. Just before midnight, he shoulders the quiver, takes the bow, and goes onto the roof in 2 or 3 movements. I step out, glance up, and find the moonlight so thin that he has already gone into it. I take the firewood knife and stand in the black under the eaves, and I wait like something that intends to kill on the first stroke. A quarter of an hour later, they arrive on the other side of the wall. The short one is briefing the others in a low voice. This household is surnamed Seo, he says, and they got rich fast, wealthy in a handful of years. He says the master is good at farming and had luck with the green jade pear, which is no ordinary crop, and that from those alone the family clears over 1,000 ounces a year. 5 people, he says, the couple and 3 sons, the eldest no more than 9. A burly middle-aged man in gray homespun tells him he chose well and calls him fifth. Then he tells the rest to be quick with their hands and their feet and leave nobody in the family alive. Once the money is found, they go the way they always go, out of Chonggang County before morning, since with refugees everywhere, finding a few particular men afterward is close to impossible. The others call him Boss Ung. Then all 5 start up the wall, and from the way they move they have done this many times. None of them is a ranked martial artist though. A third rate would have gone over a wall of that height in 2 or 3 movements instead of climbing it. They land, and 3 of them go rigid and suck air through their teeth. That is with all of them trying very hard not to make noise. Boss Ung asks in a low, unfriendly voice whether the 3 of them are trying to get themselves killed. One whispers that they stepped on nails. He tells them to be careful, and that the next man who makes a sound will hear from him about it afterward. They grope forward a few paces. Then one of the taller ones feels something take hold of his ankle. 7 or 8 bolts come out from under the eaves at once. 2 of them go down where they stand. 1 through the head and 1 through the heart. Of the other 3, 1 takes a bolt in the belly, 1 in the leg and falls, and 1 has his arm opened along the outside. Boss Ung swears and tells them there is an ambush and to get out. That is as far as he gets. My son has been holding a full draw on that roof for some time, and his eyes have been on the man with the bolt in his belly. The arrow crosses the yard and goes through the man's throat and out the back of his neck and buries itself in the wall behind him. Boss Ung shouts for his second and his eyes come up to the roof. The moon picks that moment to come out from behind the cloud. The light comes down and lays a sheet of silver over my son. What Boss Ung finds up there is a boy's face with nothing warm anywhere in it, and a gaze that goes into him like a shot. It is a child, and that is what breaks his composure. My son draws again, which holds every scrap of the man's attention, which is when I come off the ground and cover the whole distance in what is effectively 1 stride. The firewood knife comes down at his head with all my weight behind it. He gets his axe up in time and no further. The force splits the web of his hand open, and the axe leaves his fingers, and he sits down hard in my courtyard. Then I turn my wrist and take the edge across his throat, and something scalding goes across my chest and face in a spray. Behind me there is one more sound of an arrow, and the man with the ruined leg is pinned to the ground where he lies. With the last of them down, whatever my son has been holding in his chest lets go, and he sits down on the roof with a thump. He looks at his own hands, and they will not stop shaking. He could not hold that bow steady now if I asked him to, and by the look of him the world has started turning. I leave him to it and go through the bodies. Boss Ung is carrying silver, an internal strength manual titled Savage Bear Strength, and a small porcelain bottle with 6 key and blood pills in it. The other 4 have not got a single coin between them, which tells me these men had already emptied several wealthy households before mine. I start cleaning up, and my son comes out of it, drops off the roof and comes to help. Drag them all up to the mountain forest and bury them, I tell him. Wash the arrows so we can use them again and wipe the venom off first. He says he understands, father. The sun comes up the next morning the way it always does. I take the mechanisms down first thing so nobody trips one by accident. Then my eldest and I are out in the courtyard running the minor dragon elephant technique together, and the noise of it wakes my wife. She comes out with something thrown over her shoulders, yawning, and asks when the 2 of us got up. It is early, I tell her, and she is welcome to go back to bed. She says she is not a lazy person, and that if we are up, then she should be, and asks whether there is washing. There is, in the usual place, so she goes back for her clothes, takes a wooden basin and heads for the square pond. My son asks quietly whether his mother will find out. I tell him that we tidied it, though not perfectly, and that it does not much matter if she does. His mother is a reasonable woman, and besides, her husband is standing right here. He accepts that, and then tells me to watch out and calls his move, Fire Dragon Tail Sweep. He lunges with the left leg, lifts the right knee on the inhale, and sweeps the lower leg across like a whip of fire on the exhale. We spar for the better part of an hour and both of us end up soaked through, and neither of us is tired. He has innate divine strength, which lives in the muscle and the bone. I have dragon essence and tiger vigor, which lives in the blood and the breath. Then something gives inside him and he tells me happily that he has opened another acupoint. Being young is a wonderful thing, I tell him, and send him to run it a few more times and then rest. In under 2 years he will catch me and then leave me behind. The one advantage I keep is that I do not only have dragon essence and tiger vigor, I have heaven rewards diligence sitting underneath it. Everyone else slows as they go, and starts needing chi and blood herbs to open anything at all. Without a single herb my pace would not slow, and going by what I can feel, it would get faster. The days go by one after another. More refugees keep appearing, some pushing on toward Changgang County town, and some simply stopping in Dongseo village to beg a mouthful. Jin Aogu's household has rented another 5 acres of farmland, which on top of their existing 3 acres now grows the melons and vegetables I specified. The green jade pear trees on their 5 acres of mountain forest have all come out, and other fruit trees have gone in. That is a serious amount of work, so they have taken on a dozen refugees as temporary hands. Then one morning Wani's voice comes through the house telling his mother there are refugees at the door. Behind him, Dandu has half a head around the frame, looking at the ragged man outside with real uncertainty. The man has a boy of 3 or 4 by the hand, so thin he is mostly outlined with nothing behind his eyes at all. My wife comes out, takes one look, and tells Wani to fetch water and some dry rations. The man goes straight to his knees and starts knocking his head on the ground hard enough to hear, calling her a kind lady, and pulls the boy down to do the same. She tells him to stop and get up, and points out that he is frightening the child. He agrees several times over and stops. Wani comes out with the food, and the man eats like a man who has not eaten, though he does not forget to put food into the boy first. Then Dandu remembers something, runs inside, and comes back with some of the delicate pastries I make for him when I have time, the soft sweet ones. He holds them out and tells the boy that his father made them and they are good. The boy takes them blankly, looks up at the filthy man, and only starts eating after the man nods. One bite in, something comes on behind those eyes. I have been teaching Dandu to share and he has never had much feeling about it before. And today, having actually done it, he is visibly pleased with himself. My wife strokes his head, and every commoner in Dongseo village has at some point envied how our children have turned out. Once the man has got a whole flatbread down, she asks whether they are also fleeing the disaster. He says they came from Seosan County, where a flood came through of a kind nobody has seen in 100 years. It took people off in the water and it took houses down, and it put the farmland under. They have no home left and went south because there was nowhere else. She asks what they will do now, and he sighs and says there is nothing. His eldest daughter starved on the road, and after that the girl's mother gave her own rations away to the 2 of them, and starved as well. Then something occurs to him and he is back on his knees, asking her to take the 2 of them in as slaves and servants for nothing more than food. If that will not do, he says, then at least take pity on the child, who does not eat much anyway. Dandu takes hold of the corner of his mother's clothes and tells her they are so pitiful. Wani watches all of it and says nothing, because whether we take anyone in is not something either of them decides. His father has to speak first, and even then, with hundreds of thousands of refugees on the roads, no household can help them all. My wife is genuinely troubled and takes a long time before telling the man to stay by the door for now, since as a woman she cannot decide, and we must wait for her husband. I come home at noon with my eldest and find the two of them sitting outside my gate. My wife comes over and gives me the short version. I tell him we will discuss it tomorrow, and that in the meantime the pair of them can stay on the open ground beside my house. My son will bring out a simple tent this afternoon, and we will send food as well. And I tell him plainly that even if we do not keep them, they will leave here with dry rations and water for the road. He thanks me twice as master. The truth is that the Seo family has reached a size where it needs domestic servants and guards, and taking some on has been overdue. I simply do not intend to take just anybody. The next morning I run daily divination before I am properly awake. It comes back auspicious, and it tells me that I accepted the Lee father and son, that they were once a prominent family in Sosan County, and that both of them have martial talent. The father's is ordinary and the son's is quite good, with hope of reaching the innate realm. A prominent family, and that walking skeleton of a boy has the aptitude for innate. No wonder the reading came back auspicious, because taking them in is going to matter to this family's future more than anything else I could do this month. What I cannot place is how a prominent family falls this far. Most refugees are ordinary commoners, and a household with standing does not end up on a road unless somebody put them there. Seosan County is thousands of miles from here. Getting this far alive at all means the two of them are carrying some luck. Since the reading is auspicious, there is probably nothing following them. And anything with reach across several prefectures would have to be a major family in a prefectural city, which is a size of problem that does not usually bother to chase two people this far. I decide to stop turning it over and go to sleep. In the courtyard the next morning, one night of rest and a proper meal have made a visible difference to both of them. They stand with the man's large hand closed around the boy's small one, heads down, waiting on me. Tell me your names and where you come from, I say. The man raises his head and says he is Lee Gonpeng, 28 years old, and this is his younger son, Lee Taya, 4 this year, and that they fled from Sosan County. Ganpeng and Taya, I tell him. Those names carry weight, so his Lee family were not ordinary folk. Then I tell him I can see his complexion is dull and his eyes are not, and that anyone looking properly can tell he has practiced martial arts. His whole body jolts at that, because he had not expected to find that kind of eye in a village this size. He starts to answer and stops. My family does not take in people who are full of lies, I tell him. Whatever is in him goes over then, and he stands there with it. He used to be the elegant second young master of the Lee family, a name everyone in Sosan County knew. Now the family is destroyed, and he does not know how many of his clan are still breathing. All of it is smoke now, and he knows it. He looks down at his youngest son with an expression I recognize, and starts slowly to tell me where he came from. I pace while he talks and let him think I am weighing it. When he finishes, I give him the terms. I can take you in, I tell him, but I take domestic servants and nothing else. Given that your Lee family has enemies, I tell him, if you stay here you both change your names. I will provide food, clothing, housing, and transport, and I will give your son the chance to study and to practice martial arts. If he agrees to that, the two of them stay. He thinks about it properly, and I let him. The Seo family is nowhere near the scale his Lee family was, not a tenth of it, and both of us know that. What he keeps coming back to, I can see, is that he cannot find the bottom of me. He has decided I am aiming at something much larger than a farmhouse. And he has been on the road long enough to know how few kind people there are, since he has begged at several houses and a mouthful of water was the best of it. Most commoners genuinely cannot afford to keep anyone and can only send people on toward Shandong County, which means more nights in the open. He was close to his limit before he got here, and he has only just got his breath back, and he does not believe he can take much more of it. He also cannot take another road with that boy. What he has seen of this household, from me down to the children, is that we are decent to people. So after a long while, he pulls his son down to kneel beside him and says he is willing, along with his son, to become servants of the Seo family, that they do it willingly, with no grievance and no regret. In that case, I tell him, let me give you both new names. He asks me to bestow them and calls me family head. From today you are Lee E, I tell him, and your son is Lee Ji. He thanks me, and I take them through who everyone in this house is. I ask my wife to tidy an empty room for the two of them. Once they have rested a few days and got their strength back, I will find people to put up a house for them nearby. Lee E thanks the family head and the madam very properly, and my wife smiles at him. Then I send Dolly for paper and a brush to write out the servitude contract for the pair of them to sign. He says, yes, father, and makes 2 identical copies. Once the signing is done, I add one more thing. In a few days, they come with me to the county yamen to re-register their household and settle in Dongseo village, because unregistered persons do not survive an inspection. Lee E nods along to all of it. Dandu, meanwhile, has acquired a playmate his own age and could not be happier, and drags the boy off to see his toys. Several days later, Lee E, his son, and I go to the Cheongang County Yamen. Yang Zhou is chief secretary there and household registration falls to him. I greet him with my hands cupped, and he looks over the young man in the cyan gown in front of him and says this official seems to have seen me before. The chief secretary has a fine memory, I tell him. Several years ago, when he came out to Dongseo village over the Yu family's land, I was the one who led the way. So it is me, he says, and remembers my name is Seo Chan, and asks whether I have come today to ask him to handle something. He remembers he promised me a small favor, and he clearly has not forgotten it. He has misunderstood, I tell him. I have not come to trouble him, only to bring these two in to register their household and settle in Dongseo village. He looks at Li Yi and his son again. They are not in rags now, and their hair and faces are clean, and although both are still thin, their features are good, and there is something upright about the way they stand. Settle down, he repeats. They fled the floods in the west with nowhere left to go. I tell him, and wish to be servants in my household, and I decided that even servants ought to have an identity. He nods, because none of this is unusual. People who cannot get home and have no way to feed themselves either beg the whole way or become domestic servants and live under somebody else's roof and somebody else's rules. He does not want to ask more, and turns to Li Yi and asks whether the two of them are settling in Dongseo village of their own will. Li Yi replies that they are. Then state your names and ages, he says. Registering an outsider costs 5 ounces of silver a head, which I pay. Once they are settled, their descendants will register without paying anything. I thank him and start to take my leave, and he tells me to wait because he has something to ask. A great many refugees have come this way, he says, and he wants to know how Dongseo village is holding up and whether it has gone chaotic. Dongseo village is stable, I tell him. Wealthy households that need hands are taking on a few temporary laborers or servants. The truth is that this disaster has pushed refugees across the whole prefecture, and every county and county town is agonizing over what to do with them. Yangzhou is neither the magistrate nor the assistant magistrate, but a good suggestion that gets adopted counts as political achievement, and political achievement is what moves a man up. He has also noticed my clothes. The last time we met, I was in coarse hemp and looked exactly like what I was. Now my dress and my spending are approaching a wealthy households, which tells him the Seo family has done well. So a thought takes him, and he asks how I think the refugees ought to be resettled. I freeze slightly, because I was not expecting the question. The magistrates have their own considerations in matters like this, I tell him with a properly alarmed face. And how would a humble man like me dare comment? You speak casually and I will listen casually, he says. And if you speak well, this official will owe you another favor. He does like owing favors. Then this humble one will offer his foolish views, I tell him, and I begin. Leaving them to fend for themselves is out of the question, I say, and letting them turn into beggars will damage public order across the whole of Chongqing County. Better to find one place to hold them, then register and manage them one at a time so nothing gets chaotic. For those willing to settle permanently, waive some of the handling fees and put them on the register. Give them a few days of rations. Then have the county aim and open labor on water conservancy and roads to absorb a portion of them, and mobilize the wealthy households of Chongqing County to absorb another portion internally. Exactly how the numbers split depends on how many refugees the county actually has and how much the yamen and the households can each carry. He has been listening without much investment, and I watch his attention sharpen. He says he understands the labor projects, and asks how the wealthy households are supposed to absorb anyone. I tell him this Western disaster was large, and among the refugees are a good many people with martial skills, and very likely a few hidden martial artists. There is not a wealthy household anywhere that does not want domestic servants of that quality. So the yamen selects those willing to serve, gathers the households, and holds a public recruitment. It can even take some silver from the households in the process, and put it toward the refugees' food, which takes the weight off the yamen's own accounts. He nods and asks whether there is more. There is. If any villages under Chongqing County still have vacant fields, rent them free for the first 2 years to refugees willing to settle, then raise the rent by stages until the cost has been recovered. On the surface, he stays perfectly calm. Underneath it, he is shaken, because he did not expect an ordinary commoner to hand him a framework, and it has opened his thinking considerably. No wonder, he thinks, that family scale has been climbing year after year. These are only a humble man's foolish views, I add, and there are a great many details underneath them, such as separating the honest from the rest, and deciding who qualifies for the free fields. This official knows, he says. Then he looks at me and smiles and tells me that for this he owes me another favor. He hands me a token of the Yang family and says ordinary officials will give it a little face when they see it. I thank him, take it without any performance of refusing, and cup my hands and go. Li Yi, his son, and I are home by that afternoon. Behind us, Yangzhou starts drafting the resettlement plan in detail. Time goes along at its own pace, and then it is summer, with the sun sitting up there like a furnace and baking everything under it. Over this stretch, I take in 3 more servants, all of them refugees, all robust young men in their 20s. One is Ju Myung, who has a real head for management. He is quick and he handles a great deal of miscellaneous business, and he settles disputes before they become anything. The other three have all practiced martial arts, and every one of them is a martial artist. None has opened the 36 acupoints, because their families were ordinary and their days were full of other work. What decided me is that all three of them kept their lines and never used what they had to push anyone around. They become guards for the Seo family, responsible for the house, the fields, and the mountain forest. If I put real resources behind them, medicinal cuisine and chi and blood herbs, all three have a road to third rate and possibly second class. Several rough thatched cottages have gone up around our residence, and those are theirs. The cottages are only for sleeping. For meals, everyone eats together in the Seo family courtyard. Then Jin Eogu comes across at speed with his whole face lit up, because the watermelons are ripe and he wants to know when we harvest. This is his first time running an actual business and it shows. I checked the field this morning. I tell him, so we cut them tomorrow and sell across the surrounding villages the day after. Send Zhou Daryong, Sun Bugui, and Jian Yujie along, since all three have martial skills and a dozen grown men would not trouble them. That suits him, because it saves him going to his elder brother, and he says he genuinely does not want to look at that face of his that looks down on everybody. Wani comes out of his room and greets him. Jin Eogu claps his shoulder and asks whether he is excited about going out to sell melons the day after tomorrow. Uncle Iogu is the one who is excited, my son tells him flatly, and points out that it is melons, not some momentous enterprise. Jin Ogu asks whether that is any way to speak to an uncle, and makes a show of raising his hand. Wani is not remotely worried, having correctly assessed that he is joking and that Jin Eogu would never discipline him in front of me. 2 days later, the boy sets off. My wife's face is full of worry and she does not want to let him go. He is 7 years old and he will be away for several days, and when a child travels, a mother's heart travels with him. I take her hand and tell her it will be fine, with Uncle Eogu and Zhou Daryong and the others along. Zhou Daryong cups his fists at me and promises that no harm will come to the second young master, and that he will come back exactly as he left. Wani tells his mother that her son is only going out for a few days, and will be back soon. She lets him go. On this venture, the Seo family takes 35 parts in 100, and the Jin family 65, since the melons come off their land and their people do the selling. Dongseo village already knows what our melons taste like. Before the party has even cleared the village, households have bought 2 or 3 each to try, and better than 100 melons are gone. Then Dandu turns up wanting melon because the heat is unbearable. I tell him he can have it once his father has cooled it down first. I fetch a large wooden bucket, fill it with water, drop in a piece of white crystal, and put a melon of 8 or 9 pounds in after it. The melon rides up and down in the water. He puts his hand in, then looks up at me astonished, and says the water is cold. In half an hour, I tell him we can eat iced watermelon. He cheers and goes off to play with Li Ji, who no longer looks like a bundle of sticks. The boy has come back to what a 3 or 4-year-old should be, round-faced with a hint of something handsome coming through the brows. I think for a moment and put 2 smaller melons into the bucket as well. Half an hour later, I call my eldest over, point into the bucket, and send 1 melon to Uncle Jin's house and 1 to Jin Eogu's. He carries them out and comes back later to report. At Uncle Jin's, he handed it over and said his father sent an iced melon because the summer is hot. Uncle Jin put his hand on it, said it was iced indeed, and observed that my capabilities keep increasing, which made my son go shy. Then Uncle Jin told him to thank his father for him. By the time he gets back, my wife, Li Yi, and his son and I have started on ours. He walks over, picks a cut slice off the table without ceremony, sits down beside me, and takes a bite that sends pale red juice in every direction. So sweet, he says. 2 days later, the melon party comes home, and the trip could not have gone more smoothly, with every melon sold. At Jin Eogu's house, Seo Yan looks at the silver and her eyes go into crescents. She counts the silver and the copper several times over. That is only the watermelon money, and with the other seasonal produce on top of it, the year is going to come out well. The 5 acres of fruit trees in their mountain forest will not give anything until next year at the earliest. Jin Eogu tells his wife that the selling went beautifully, and at the moment people elsewhere heard the melons came from Brother Cheon's family, almost nobody bothered to haggle. He takes a leisurely sip of tea with a very satisfied look on his face. "Is it that good?" she says. "Then we raise the price next time." He tells her no, that he suggested exactly that and Wani vetoed it. The boy pointed out the melons are already priced above the usual and returning a good profit, and there is no sense ruining a reputation over a few more coins. On top of that, anyone who bought 5 or more got a gift. She wants to know what gift. Some sort of stone, he says, that makes water cold enough to chill a melon. So that, she realizes, is how the iced melon her nephew brought over was made. Seo Yan is more than surprised because she can see what a stone like that is worth in summer, and asks where it came from. He tells her, and Wani does not know either, since it came from Brother Cheon and there is not much of it. Then he stretches his legs out along the bench and rolls his eyes. Now that she has seen her husband's ability, he suggests she might come and work on his shoulders and his legs, given how tired he is. She looks at him and leaves him to work that one out alone. His heart is tired, he decides. This woman, she is like this even after he has made money. Then he remembers to tell her that we are all eating at Brother Qian's house tonight to celebrate the trip. That evening, Xiao Yan is not going to let the chance go and asks me where the white stones came from. I tell her I came across them in the mountain forest and worked out what they did by accident, which is not really a lie. What I do not tell her is that some looking around and a bit of testing turned up a saltpeter deposit near here. I do not have the capacity to work it yet, so I have shelved it. The larger point is that the tract of forest it sits in is ownerless, and strictly speaking it belongs to the Chonggang County government. Time gets away from me again, and then it is the annual sacrifice and I have reached 30. The next day, mid-morning, my wife's stomach turns on her, and it is time. I send Zhou Daryong and Sun Bugui for the midwife I booked weeks ago and ask to keep these days clear. Finding that she walks too slowly for their liking, the two of them simply pick her up and carry her here at speed, which does nothing good for her heart or her color. Then comes the effort, and the struggle, and the shouting. 2 or 3 hours later, she delivers. And this time, she delivers twins, a girl and a boy. The girl arrives first, and I name her Seo Myung-suk, and at home, she is Seo Hui. The boy is Seo Myung-seon, called Ano. Then time goes again, and it is the full-month banquet for the pair of them, with the Bake relatives, Uncle Jin. The rest all coming to celebrate and leaving only once they have eaten and drunk their fill. Afterward, I go into the main hall and take blood from both small fingertips for the family genealogy. Seo Myung-suk reads as second generation of the Seo family. Spiritual root, incomplete 5 elements, no aptitude to cultivate, talent, none, and bloodline, none. Then there is a note underneath, and the note says her soul power is twice a normal person's, and that she was born with acute spiritual perception. Her soul power is double, I think, and her perception is that sharp already. It seems my soul Hui came with something after all, and she may be suited to whispers of all spirits, which would eventually let her handle fierce beasts. Then I look at her brother's entry, and everything changes. Seo Myung-seon, second generation of the Seo family. Spiritual root, complete 5 elements, can cultivate mixed spirit roots aptitude. Talent, chi swallowing mountains and rivers. Bloodline, none. The note explains what I am looking at. Everyone who cultivates has complete 5 elements, and their aptitude divides into pseudo-spiritual root, mixed spirit roots, true spiritual root, earthly spiritual root, and heavenly spiritual root, sorted by how pure the root is. And it explains the talent, which guides chi into the body and multiplies the speed at which magic power recovers, several times an ordinary rate, and, taken to its extreme, many times over. Cultivation aptitude. The Seo family has finally produced cultivation aptitude. From the second generation there is now a road, however thin, that runs to the world of cultivators. And then a great volume of something pours into my head all at once and settles into a shape. It is a classic manual for going from a mortal to an immortal, and it is called the Innate 5 Elements Creation Art. The genealogy produced at the moment the family's first descendant with cultivation aptitude was born. It can only be practiced once a person reaches the innate realm as a martial artist. What it does is make up the defects in the 5 elements, purify the spiritual root, and carry it all the way up to a true spiritual root. From mortal to immortal. I stand in my own main hall wanting to laugh out loud like a lunatic. What that manual actually means is that the descendants of the Seo family will keep producing people with cultivation aptitude, generation after generation, instead of waiting on a 1 in 10,000 accident. Then I stop myself, because no, we cannot be conspicuous. I take a long breath and let it out slowly, and my shoulders come down. The creation art only gets bestowed once somebody in the second generation actually reaches the innate realm. From the third generation, the family's numbers are going to climb steeply, and at that point I select the best and give the destiny talents and the techniques to them. In the space of a minute, I have laid out the shape of this family for the next 100 years. They will all be my descendants, and as the generations run on, there will be too many of them for anyone to be fair to everyone. There will have to be a main branch and minor branches, a direct lineage and collateral lines. Myung-seon, I think, looking at him. The name was not chosen wrongly after all, and a destiny talent like chi swallowing mountains and rivers on top of it. The boy is a cultivation seed, so I hold him up in both hands with my eyes shining and grin at him, and he chooses that exact moment to make water in a clean arc that lands with real accuracy. This brat. Of my 5 children, he is the first to manage it. He does have admirable courage. I take him to his mother, go and change, and reflect that the innate 5 elements creation art has just rewritten what I intended for my second son as well. Even if it costs a mountain of resources, Wani is going to innate. Everyone has selfish motives, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. What becomes of my great-great-grandsons is not something I can feel, but for the children I have watched grow up in front of me, I want them to live longer, and I want them to be around longer. So the next morning after our exercise, I tell my eldest that from today he needs to carve out time to teach his brother martial arts. Wani, he says, thoroughly thrown, and asks whether I did not tell him to do business. Just tell him I said so, I answer. We are not short of manuals now. There is the minor dragon elephant technique, the flood dragon fist, savage bear strength, and the ones Joe Daryong and the others copied out, so let him pick whichever he likes. Then I tell my eldest that he needs to move faster himself and reach innate as soon as he can, because when he does, his father has a great opportunity waiting for him. He says yes, father, and would never go against me, but he hesitates and then asks what happens if his brother refuses. Then he can hardly blame me for sending him to the martial arts academy, I tell him. If he takes it seriously at home, he keeps a certain amount of freedom, and at the academy he will not have the option. My eldest sighs somewhere behind his face, and I can see him composing an apology to his brother in advance. After breakfast, I go out to walk the farmland and the mountain, checking how the fruit and the vegetables and the young trees are coming. I tell the experienced hands what to do about anything that is off. I rarely have to do any of it myself now. When I have time, I find an open patch and run the minor dragon elephant technique, and I have opened 32 acupoints, which leaves 4 before third rate. Once I add medicinal cuisine to it, that pace will pick up considerably. In the courtyard, my second son has turned to stone. There is no way, he tells his brother, that I want him practicing martial arts, and he asks whether this is father's idea. Did you not tell me to do business, he says. Father did not tell you to stop doing business, his brother answers, and probably wants you to balance the two. Wani's face achieves a color I have not seen on it before. He points out that he also has to balance reading and calligraphy, and that this is simply too much. Dandu wanders over, takes one look, points, and asks whether his second brother ate something bad, because his face looks terrible. Wani tells him to go away and play with his Li Ji. Dandu says he was going anyway and now does not need him at all, and stalks off toward the gate with his lip out. That brat, Wani observes, has no idea how miserable his own future is going to be. Then he turns to his brother and asks, as one brother to another, whether he really cannot beg father for mercy. I begged, his brother says, with a completely level face. It was useless. Judging by father's tone, he adds, he estimates that every single descendant of the Seo family is going to be practicing martial arts from here on. Wani says he is honestly a bit envious of Don Yu and Bang Bang, since at least Uncle Eogu is not this strict. Father is doing this for our own good, his brother says seriously. I know, Wani says. I am only complaining, and if you actually made me change fathers, I could not do it. Then he takes a deep breath and something settles in his eyes. He says that he will practice, and practice seriously, if only so that a tiger father does not end up with a dog for a son. His brother laughs and shakes his head and points out that this is martial arts, not the battlefield, and asks why he looks like a man walking to his execution. Then he holds out several manuals fanned out in one hand, and tells him to choose. Any recommendations? Wani asks. Father said the minor dragon elephant technique asks more of your aptitude, his brother says. He might as well take the flood dragon fist, since second Uncle Lee has practiced it and can walk him through the beginning properly even if he is not remarkable at it. Then the flood dragon fist it is, Wani says, and the two of them go off to find second Uncle Lee. From that day there is one more figure in the courtyard at morning exercise. Then, gradually, Joe Daryong, Sun Bugui, and John Yujie start joining in as well, because with the masters of the house that diligent, none of them is willing to be the one who is not. The family's holdings are not large yet, so most of the time they are idle. That includes Ju Myong, who runs the occasional errand for my wife or me, deals with outside contacts, keeps the accounts, and offers an idea when he has one. He can see the potential in this household perfectly well. As far as he is concerned, the good years are all still in front of him. 5 years go by. The sun comes up over the Seo family courtyard, and my two eldest are sparring while Lee Yi, Joe Daryong, and I watch from the side. Wani steps his feet apart across the trigram positions, and wraps his arms as though a dragon were coiling a pillar. That is the flood dragon fist opening. The form is called Dragon Slumbers in the Vast Abyss. Big brother, he says, be careful. Just use your full strength, his brother tells him, and stands there entirely unhurried. 5 autumns and winters have gone since my second son started practicing. My eldest is 15 this year and already close to my height, and in a couple of years he will pass me. Wani is a head shorter, and 5 years of training through the worst heat and the worst cold have quietly sanded the flightiness off him. The light in his eyes is under control now, and he is a martial artist. He has not dropped his reading or his calligraphy either, though they get less of him than martial arts do. As for business, he goes out with Jin Yogu after the annual harvest. These days they take the fruit and vegetables into Cheongkang County, building the name of Dongseo Village. Seo family produce a season at a time. Over those 5 years, both households have grown their land considerably. The Seo family bought outright, and we now hold 20 acres of paddy, 10 acres of farmland, and 13 acres of mountain forest. Somewhere in that forest is a body of water called Byokan Pond, cold at the surface and never freezing. Go 100 meters in and keep going down, and it gradually turns warm, which is not how water behaves. Even a martial artist who jumped into that pond would freeze to death in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, and diving to the bottom is exceptionally difficult. Because of exactly that peculiarity, I found a way to bring it under my own name. I have been down into it once, and I came back up quickly. As my own cultivation keeps moving, and with the talent underneath it, my chi and blood get more forceful every year. I am only a second-class martial artist, and the vigor in my blood is more frightening than a good many first-class ones. My eldest is likewise second class, with 286 acupoints opened, which is over 20 more than mine, and he is not far off first class. A boy reaching first class before 16 is normally something only a commandery city family with a grandmaster behind it can produce. He has innate divine strength, and his bones are not fully set, which makes acupoints easier to open. On top of that, he has been diligent day and night without ever letting it slide, and on top of that, he has had medicinal cuisine every day for 5 years. That combination is the whole explanation. Ever since the innate 5 elements creation art arrived, I decided that everyone in this house who practices martial arts eats medicinal cuisine daily. Anyone carrying a destiny talent could manage without it. An ordinary person cultivating the martial road cannot, and without medicinal cuisine or the corresponding chi and blood herbs, they will start showing signs of decline. Either one costs real silver. Fortunately, this family's ability to make money is not weak. Between the windfall we took off Boss Ung years ago, the green jade pear bringing in a reliable sum every year, the melons, fruit, and vegetables on top of that. The Seo family is now the wealthiest household in all of Dongseo Village, second only to the Seo estate. Measured on what is actually left over after a year's expenses, we are first and it is not close. Apart from my wife, Jo Myung, and me, nobody knows that. Even my sons only know it in outline. We are extremely quiet about it in this village. Every direct member of this family treats other people with modesty and none of them throws weight around. Jo Myung, Jo Dae-ryung, Sun Bugui, and the rest are the same. In 5 years, they have all taken wives and been thoroughly diligent about children, and every one of those households has produced 1 or 2. With wives and children here, they have properly rooted into Dongseo Village and belong to it now. From here on, none of them is only working for himself. Out in the courtyard, the 2 of them go at it. Their palms come up in claw shapes, crossing and slashing, and their waists snap the strikes out, so it looks like a dragon probing with its claws or an angry one parting water. Lee nods along and remarks that the second young master's flood dragon fist is already no worse than his own, and that in half a year the boy will pass him. Jo Dae-ryung glances at the smug expression on him and asks whether he has the nerve to compare himself to the second young master at all. "How old are you?" he says. "And how old is he?" "By the time the second young master reaches your age, he will already be first class." Lee Yi's face goes flat because his martial talent is average and he cannot argue with any of it. What he does have is a prominent family behind him, and a horizon the others cannot match. He taught Wani personally, and even with daily medicinal cuisine behind him, this pace is genuinely fast. The medicinal cuisine he ate himself in his old life was far more precious than what this family provides, and it still took him until 17 or 18 to reach where Wani is. Some of that was his own slackness, and after he married he paid even less attention, which is why he has only recently made third rate. He used to think that with his family behind him his life would run smoothly. Nobody warned him how quickly a family can stop being behind you. Wani, he can read. My eldest, he cannot read at all, and a 15-year-old with the bearing of an expert is not something he has an explanation for. Could the eldest young master have quietly become second class, he wonders, because a second-class martial artist at that age is extremely rare even among the families in the county town. In his own Lee family, he recalls, 1 or 2 per generation at most managed second class before 15. The eldest is that outstanding and the second is good as well. So he starts wondering, quietly, whether this Seo family carries some kind of martial bloodline legacy, since he has heard that certain large families in the commandery city do, that it makes powerful martial artists far more likely. He keeps that thought to himself. Out on the ground, Wani comes in hard and my eldest does not change expression, crossing his arms to cover his chest and simply stopping the attack. Then he turns a collapsing palm outward, and my second son leaves the ground. Wani flips, comes down on one knee, and slides 2 or 3 meters before he stops. Counter-scale surfing, he calls, and goes forward low along the ground with his right fist spiraling up from underneath, which is a move built for attacking the lower body. My eldest smiles, lifts a corner of his robe, and retreats with his legs coming up alternately. After a few steps, he has read the move, plants one leg as though it has grown roots, and whips the other out like an elephant's trunk straight into his brother's rising fist. Wani tumbles several times and comes up thoroughly disheveled. My eldest takes the force, stays where he is like a mountain, and lowers his leg without hurrying. Jo Daryong, Sun Bugwi, and John Yuje all cheer. Wani, I tell my second son, with that half-cooked kung fu of yours, stop embarrassing yourself in front of your brother. Then I tell Jo Daryong to spar with him and not to hold anything back. Yes, family head, he says, cups his fists at me, turns to my eldest and asks him for instruction. Jo Daryong was an apprentice at a martial hall once and has sparred with a great many people. His combat experience is far more seasoned than my second son's. He no longer follows the manual rigidly but adapts as he goes, and every move he throws is aimed at something vital and meant to end things. None of it touches my eldest. In front of other people, my son never uses more than third-rate strength, but his judgment and his combat sense are worth several of Jo Daryong. For 2 years now, he has gone deep into the mountain forest every 2 or 3 days to fight fierce beasts. Every few days, he comes back with carcasses. The wolf pelts and fox pelts alone add up to a serious amount of money. There was one occasion he came back with an entire white fox, which is not a small thing. A white fox moves like the wind, and even a first-class martial artist would struggle to catch one in those forests. A complete white fox pelt fetches hundreds of ounces of silver in Chonggang County. I told him to decide what to do with it himself, and without needing a moment, he had it made into a fur coat for his mother. She was moved enough that she has never been able to bring herself to wear it. A short while later, Jo Daryong cannot fend him off at all. Sun Bubui, John Yuje, I say both of you go in with him. Yes, family head, they say, and they have been itching for it, so they are into it before I finish speaking. 3 at once, each of them a martial artist with over 20 acupoints open, and my eldest finally feels something. He raises his internal strength very slightly. Against 3, he goes to blocking and slipping rather than trading. His figure runs an S through them, knees lifting and arms swinging to cover. And when he lands, his toes tap and put all his force into one point so he can surge between them. It looks like a burning dragon crossing a swamp, flexible and explosive at the same time. And it is a movement method out of the minor dragon elephant technique called dragon roaming the winding swamp. He drifts back and forth like that for a dozen breaths until the encirclement develops a flaw. Something sharp goes across his eyes. A sweeping low kick puts 2 of them off their feet, and he uses the momentum to twist and come off the ground. His right leg comes down onto the last man's shoulder like an axe. The force in it lands like a boulder and folds Jian Yuje onto one knee with sweat standing out across his forehead. Let us end it there, I say. My son takes his foot back, breathes out once, and does not have a drop of sweat on his face. The 3 of them get up, cup their fists, bow, and thank the eldest young master for his mercy, with real admiration in it. He tells them they are too polite and that he was lucky and only a little better. I nod, satisfied with all of it. Then a small round girl who looks like a porcelain doll comes across the yard and announces crisply that breakfast is ready for her daddy and her brothers. Li Yi, Jo Daryong, and the others say they will head back, and I let them. In the old days when they were on their own, eating with us was nothing. Now that each of them has a household and children, sitting down at the main family's table every day is no longer quite right. The 5 ounces a month I pay them is not matched anywhere in Dongseo village. My little Seolhui, I say, and scoop her up and bump the tip of my nose against hers, until she squeals that it tickles. She is Myeongshuk, and as the only girl in this family she collects more affection than the other 4 combined. On the square table there is a large basin of minced meat porridge in the middle, with scallion pancakes and egg pancakes around it, and pickles and pickled radish besides. It is a thoroughly extravagant breakfast. There are 7 people in the Seo family and 6 of us sitting here. The one missing is Dan Du, who went to the Cheonryong Martial Arts Hall in Chonggang County 3 years ago. Li Ji went with him, and the pair of them come home one day in 7. My wife ladles porridge for me with her son plainly on her mind and says that Dan Du comes back tomorrow, and she wonders whether he has lost weight. He is valued at that hall and will not be badly treated, I tell her, which is apparently the wrong thing to say. It sets off a whole store of complaints, and she asks with some heat why, with this many martial artists in the household, Dandu had to go to a martial hall at all. A hall is a mixed bag of fish and dragons, she says, and asks how I can guarantee nobody bullies him. I do not explain much. There were 2 reasons and both still hold. The first is that he gets better cultivation there than I can give him. The second is that he builds connections there that this family does not otherwise have. Because of what those 2 boys are, an instructor at Hucheon peak level took both of them as disciples. Through that relationship, the man is now on good terms with the Seo family, which is worth considerably more than a year of my own teaching. After breakfast, I put my bowl down and look at my second son. A couple of days ago, I tell him, Uncle Yogu proposed that our 2 families jointly open a fruit and vegetable shop in the county town, and I want to know what he thinks. A shop in the county town, he says, and it was Auntie's idea, surely. He mentions that Dan Yu told him a while back that their family has been talking about moving into the county town. Then he goes to the numbers. Given what the two families' land produces, he says supplying 2 or 3 shops would not be a problem at all. If we are really opening one, he says, he suggests our family opens its own. With the quality of our produce and green jade pear as the signboard, the business will be extremely good even if it is not the very best in the city. Then he remembers something and smiles, and points out that the green jade pears ripen in about another half month, which makes them the perfect seasonal fruit to open with and put our name up. Then he hesitates over the CO estate. He glances at me while he does it, because he knows I have spent years being patient with them, which is exactly why the pears still go there every season. But every time he watches those people come to collect the crop with that look on their faces, he wants to walk over and hit somebody. The CO estate, I say, and then I smile at him. Since you already have a plan, from this year we stop selling to them. He says that is wonderful. I tell him I will put Ju Myung on the shop with him in Cheonggang County Town, and that he should draw whatever silver he needs from his mother. Lee Yi, Joe Daryong, and the others are at his disposal too. He nods and rubs his hands together with his whole body full of motivation, because this is the first step the CO family takes toward the county town properly. Then my wife asks whether Uncle Iogu's family will object to us not working together. My son tells her she does not know the half of it. When Uncle Iogu ran it, it was fine. Once Auntie took it over, she repeatedly sold behind our backs, raised prices without telling us, and pulled small tricks constantly, and several times it nearly damaged the CO family's name. If it were not for the friendship between Uncle Aoji and Daddy, he says, he would have asked to end the arrangement long ago. My wife looks surprised and more than a little suspicious. I am entirely calm about it and give it 4 words which are too clever by half. Then I tell my son that since the shop is his, he goes and talks to Jin Ogu himself, and I ask whether he knows how to put it. He says he does, and that it will not touch the friendship between his father and Uncle Aogu, and then decides to go right now before anything can complicate it. He shovels the rest of the porridge down and is out the door. My eldest stands up and tells me he is going into the mountains. I acknowledge it. Then Myung-shuk stands up, takes hold of the corner of his clothes, tips her head back, and informs him that she wants a small animal. He hesitates because the beasts in that forest are not tame and are not the sort of thing anybody carries home. If there are any newborns, I tell him, a few would not hurt. Understood, he says, and crouches down and rubs her head and promises to bring her some. She thanks her big brother. Myung-suk carries Whispers of All Spirits now, which was the last unknown destiny talent on the bloodline genealogy. It lets her speak with beasts, and it makes them take to her naturally, seeking advantage and avoiding harm went to Dandu long ago. Seolhui, Uno, I say to the twins. The 2 of you are 6 now, so you start martial arts as well. Understood. My wife's shoulders move slightly at that, but she does not say anything and goes on clearing the bowls off the table. Both of them say yes, Daddy. Myung-suk's eyes are full of curiosity, and her brother has both fists closed tight with excitement. Then who is going to teach us, Daddy, he asks, and I tell him I will do it myself. At the main gate of the Jin house, the gatekeeper cups his hands and asks the second young master Seo whether he wants the eldest young master or the master. Every gatekeeper here knows how close the 2 families are. I am looking for Uncle Iogu, my son says, and the man leads him in. 5 years of working together has turned the Jin family into prominent landlords in Dongseo village. Compared to his elder brother, who is a second-class martial artist, Jin Iogu's days are noticeably more comfortable. Jin Daemyong married a wealthy merchant's daughter and has never been much good at earning silver or at business. Over the past 2 years, he borrowed heavily from his father and his father-in-law and used the connections to get himself into the Cheonggang County Yamen as a runner. He skims a certain amount most of the time and it is only adequate, and sometimes he borrows from Jin Iogu as well. In front of his elder brother, Jin Iogu finally stands up straight these days. If Daemyong could reach first class, it would be a different conversation. But he is 40 now, and his potential is spent, and second class is where he stops. That is precisely why he went looking for a yamen post, since an iron rice bowl is at least steady. The Jin courtyard has been rebuilt, and a large new one added, half again the size of ours, with accountants, gatekeepers, and maidservants in it. It has the air of a genuine, comfortable landlord's house. My son looks around on the way through and thinks that Uncle Iogu certainly knows how to enjoy himself. It has been a month or 2, and there's already another osmanthus tree in a rockery. In the front yard, Jin Daenu is practicing, and he stops the moment he sees who it is and comes over smiling to ask why he is here. After my second son took up martial arts, Daenu raised it with his own father. Seeing that everyone in the Seo family practiced, Jin Iogu sent him to a martial school. The Black Tiger Martial Arts Hall has acquaintances of Jin Daemyong, and as Daemyong's nephew, the boy gets a certain amount of care, though whether anyone succeeds at martial arts is still down to himself. Fortunately, unlike his father, Jin Daenu has perseverance. He is up practicing at cockcrow and does not stop until midnight. With his family sparing nothing on him, his strength is coming up close to my second son's, and third rate in 2 or 3 years is not in doubt, with second class before 30 a reasonable expectation. Come on, Wani, he says. It is rare to see you when I get home. Let us spar a little. I will not lose to you now. Next time, my son tells him, since he has serious business with Uncle Iogu. Setting aside that cousin aunt of his, who is beyond 5 degrees of kinship anyway, my second son genuinely likes the temperaments of the Jin father and son. Business is business, and he keeps the lines clean, because that is the example he grew up watching. Looking for my dad, Daenu says, all right, but with you this distracted I am going to pass you sooner or later. Comparing yourself to me is nothing, my son tells him. Martial arts was forced on me by my father, he says, and if you want a comparison, compare with my eldest brother because on the martial road I am not remotely his equal. I am not stupid, Daenu says. I will just compare with you. Looking at that thoroughly pleased expression, my son gives up, waves a hand, tells him not to let his practice be disturbed, and follows the gatekeeper to the inner courtyard. Wani, Jin Iogu says the moment he sees him, why are you here? With genuine pleasure all over his face. He waves the gatekeeper away, and the man cups his hands and returns to the front gate. You have something to discuss, Jin Iogu says. Come with me to the study. Inside, a whole row of shelves is packed with books. Seeing my son looking at them, he explains cheerfully that it is a front, since Uncle Iogu does not have much ink in his belly and can only put the effort into the surface. Lately, he says, he has felt more and more that Brother Cheon having all of you read and practice calligraphy from childhood was exactly right, and never dropping it even while you practice martial arts. Unlike his Danyu, he says, who has thrown himself entirely into the martial road and has probably forgotten most of what he learned in his school years. Then he offers tea, and my son declines, having just eaten. Uncle Aogyu mentioned opening a shop in the county town to my dad, my son says. That is right, Jin Aogyu says. Did your dad agree? He nods and says that his father agrees about opening a shop, since developing in Dongseo village as a ceiling and the future center of the Seo family is going to be Chongqing County town. Is that so? Jin Aogyu says, and the pleasure comes right back into his face. So let uncle and nephew sit down and work out how to do it. There is no need, Uncle Aogu, my son says. Jin Ogu stops with his cup halfway and looks at him. At 13, the childishness has mostly gone out of my second son's face and been replaced by a certain bearing and a good deal of confidence. Chongqing County is not the countryside, he says. It is mostly high officials and men of standing, and if the two families are joined and anything goes wrong, both households lose everything they have built. So his suggestion is that the families separate. You mean each of us opens a shop and runs it alone, Jin Iogu says, and my son nods. Jin Iogu sits with it. Years of doing this have made him something other than a newcomer, and he has his own calculations about trade now. It is not unworkable, he says eventually. Chongqing County town is the wealthiest and largest of the neighboring counties, and the market for fruit and vegetables is enormous. As long as the two shops are not opened on top of each other, neither will hurt the other and both take the most profit available. Seeing that he is already halfway there, my son closes it. Then let us settle it that way, Uncle Iogu, he says, since Dad has put me in complete charge of the Seo family shop and I have to go and get on with it. Chongqing County town hides crouching tigers and hidden dragons, he adds, so he has to plan properly as well. Then he takes his leave, and as he steps out of the inner courtyard, Seo Yan happens to come out of her room and sees him. Her brows come together and she goes straight to the study to ask what Wani came for, and whether it was about the county town shop. That is right, Jin Iobu says, though after thinking it over, he has decided they will separate and each family will open its own. We cannot use the Seo family's name for everything we do forever, he says. That is not wrong, she starts. But nowadays, he puts a hand up and stops her there, and says they should leave it and start working out their own shop instead. She sighs somewhere behind her face and concludes that the Seo family does not want to cooperate anymore. So be it, she decides. This way there is nothing to be careful about, and they can do exactly as they like. Then he asks her whether they should open in the East Market or the West Market, since the East has the high officials and the men of standing, and the West has more ordinary people. The East, naturally, she tells him, because the East is busy and earns more. At my house, my second son puts the same question to me and answers it himself first. He suggests the East Market, since we have sold everything in the East Market before and already have a footing there. Wani, I tell him, peddling from a stall and running a shop are not the same thing. A stall can move and a shop takes root. The East Market is busy and prices higher and profits higher, and behind all that bustle sit interests tangled around each other in ways that take years to learn. So you lean toward the West Market, Daddy, he says. and I nod and tell him that today I am going to explain what a supermarket is. I take him through it. He is quick, and he has the whole shape of it before I have finished, and then he starts running ahead of me. In the West Market, he says, the CO family can buy fruit and vegetables from independent growers and sell them under the CO family's name. Our own produce gets classed separately as premium goods and priced considerably higher, so the distinction is obvious. And for growers who do not want to sell to us, he says, we can offer a cooperative arrangement instead, where the CO family provides the space and takes a rent. We hold green jade pear as a gold-plated signboard. He says so making a name is easy, and with a name comes traffic. That traffic then sells the ordinary growers fruit as well, which raises their volume, which pulls in more growers. Like rolling a snowball, he says, and his eyes have gone bright the way they do when he has found something. Then he tells me he is going to Cheonggang County Town now to talk to growers and choose a location, and that he will be gone a few days. Go ahead, I tell him. Take Jumyong and Jo Daryong and the others. And remember to put stability first, because a few good arrangements beat a great many poor ones. Yes, Dad, he says. He goes to his mother for several thousand ounces in silver notes and leaves for the county town with his people that afternoon. Broken Tooth Mountain stands in ranks of green peaks with mist wound through them. It rises thousands of feet, and it takes its name from a summit split into two halves like teeth bitten off by something enormous. From far enough away, it looks like a vicious beast out of the first age lying in a sea of cloud. Every surrounding village lives off its lower slopes, and though the commoners are forever clearing more forest, all of them together have taken only a sliver of it. Deep inside, fierce beasts move in packs, and even a first-class martial artist would not promise to cross the whole of it, because the rumor is that Yao beasts with real intelligence live in there. At this moment, a figure in dark cyan is going through the trees like an ape, and every time he shifts position, a flock of birds comes up. That is my eldest son with two bows across his back. One is a large black iron bow, made to order, which takes over 1,000 pounds of force to open it all, and more than 3,000 to bring to a full moon. Only a first-class martial artist can draw it full on physical strength alone, and only a Huxian peak martial artist with every acupoint connected handles it comfortably. Arrows off that bow chase cloud and lightning, and even a newly advanced innate martial artist could be badly hurt by one if it caught him wrong. The other is a pine-colored longbow, ordinary enough and more than sufficient for tigers and wolves. He only takes the black iron bow out for the strange ones. Where he is now is a dozen miles past the outermost forest the commoners work, and hunters from the villages never come this deep. He shifts a few more times and finds the mark he cut into a trunk last time with his dagger, which is the character for Seo. It is cut deep into the wood, the strokes running like a snake and a dragon in motion, and there is real spirit in it. I require every child of this family to practice calligraphy daily until they turn 15. 10 years of that is a long apprenticeship in something other than handwriting, because practicing calligraphy is also grinding down the heart. My son only worked that out recently, and I gather his opinion of his father went up when he did. So he still writes often, to put his ambition somewhere he can see it. As for the small animal Xiolu he asks for, he decides he can look on the way back. He goes deeper at speed, and moving through the trees is a great deal safer than moving on the ground. Then something the size of a fist comes at his head out of nowhere with a whistle behind it. He twists at the waist and lets it go past, but being ambushed in midair breaks his line and he has to land. Looking up, he finds a burly white-furred ape with a red face on a trunk dozens of meters above him, showing its teeth and dancing about at him. Such a burly monkey, he thinks, and his pupils tighten because he has never seen this kind before. That arm has at least 1,000 pounds behind it, and an ordinary hunter meeting it would have his skull opened in the first exchange. The ape looks thoroughly annoyed and throws a second object, a black sphere, and he slips that one as easily as the first. Then curiosity gets him and he goes over and picks it up. It is a fruit, and it is strangely hard, and squeezing it is like squeezing stone, which surprises him considerably. He decides to take it home and let his father look at it. Then he picks up a pebble and throws it back. The ape is nimble, and his throwing speed is not something it has met before. It dodges and does not dodge far enough, and the stone opens its waist and takes a spray of blood with it. The ape howls, claps a hand over the wound, and looks at him with something new in its eyes, which is fear. It makes two more noises with a good deal of resentment in them and leaves quickly. Consider yourself wise, he thinks, because if it had come at him again, he would have killed it. He finds the other black fruit, puts it in his pack, and goes on. He is not down here purely to hunt, because hunting would keep him too busy to do anything else. He could find several head at almost any moment. What he wants are the unusual ones, to sharpen himself against tigers and great bears whose raw physical strength runs past some first-class martial artists. Beasts are still beasts, though, and unless they come in numbers, they are not a martial artist's equal, and even a third-rate can kill one using a weapon, footwork, and a plan. What my son goes looking for is close-quarters work with his hands, because that is what actually tempers a man. Then the view opens out. A pale blue lake lies in front of him with the light moving on it, and green grass around the edge. Across the water there is a tiger over half a man's height, brown-yellow with black bars, heavy through the limbs. Its long thick tail ringed in black and tipped black. Everything about the way it is put together says power. His pupils tighten slightly, and when it turns its head he can see the king mark on its forehead clearly. It has a horned deer in its jaws and is dragging it toward the trees. What a tiger, he thinks. Far heavier and far stronger than anything he has met before. He follows. Before long he is at the foot of a low hill with a face so sheer it looks as though somebody opened it with one sword stroke. The rock is mostly under clematis, which is flowering large and strange, and at the base there is a cave that is obviously the tiger's home. He closes in. The tiger's ears move and it lets go of the deer and turns, and a pair of big amber eyes with hard light in them fix on him. He sets down the longbow and the quiver and everything else, laughs out loud, leaps, closes both fists and smashes down. The tiger comes up to meet him and swings a front paw. Fist and paw meet, and man and tiger come off each other evenly and both give ground. Such fierce strength, he says, grinning. An ordinary tiger runs a little over 2,000 pounds and tops out near 3. That one just put over 4,000 behind a single swipe, which is enough to send a bear sideways and leave it seeing stars. Come again, he says, with his blood well and truly up. The tiger takes the challenge as an insult to its standing and roars, and everything in its eyes now says pray. He stamps hard enough to crack the ground and goes forward like a loosed arrow. The tiger does not meet it and leaps aside instead, and by the time his movement settles, that ringed tail comes round like a whip, and he hears it before it lands. He blocks with both arms and is thrown several meters. The tiger's mouth opens and it comes for him on the ground. The corner of his mouth goes up. He puts one hand down and drives his right foot out like a spear, and the tiger goes better than 10 meters through the air. It lands, rolls twice, and comes up staring at him with a great deal more seriousness. Then another roar comes out of the cave, and a second tiger walks out slowly, lighter in the coat and smaller. A tigress, he thinks, so a married pair lives here. Just as well, he decides, because one tiger was not enough pressure. He laughs out loud a few times because up to now he has been using nothing but his physical strength, and with internal energy and martial skill he could have played with the male. The male roars at the female and she answers. Then the two of them split and come at him from either side, and from how smoothly they do it, this is not the first time they have surrounded something together. The male goes in first while the female closes slowly. He keeps 3 parts of his attention on her the whole time. She takes her openings, pouncing sometimes and whipping her tail other times, and not one of them lands. Then he starts using minor dragon elephant moves with his internal energy behind them, and every one of those carries close to 6,000 pounds. Both tigers are built extraordinarily solidly and take several of those before anything gives. Good, he says. Only this is worth doing. After that he stops holding anything back and puts his footwork and his martial skill into it completely. The wind off his fists whistles, and the sound of them going through the air rolls out across that clearing. In the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, both tigers have been beaten to death with his hands. He does not hold back at the end, because this is the oldest kind of struggle there is, and it runs one way only. If he were not their match, the one lying in that grass would be him.